Planning Commission Subdivision Committee regular meeting. Can we get a roll call, please?
Chair Andre,
Here.
Vice Chair DeBolt,
Here.
Commissioner Quilty, here. Commissioner Gross,
Here.
Commissioner Lowe,
Here.
Commissioner Riley,
Here.
and Commissioner Sofocani.
You'd all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So at this time, if there is anyone in the audience that would like to address the Planning Commission and speak on any item within the subject matter that is not on the agenda, it's time to come up to the podium. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes for August 23rd, 2017.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Okay. We have nothing on the consent calendar. Then we move to staff reports. Item 7A is the introduction of the new city attorney, Michael S. Stout, and Assistant City Attorney Kendra L. Carney of Woodruff, Spradlin, and Spradlin and Smart.
Good evening. I'll give the staff report on that. There's
Thank you.
no written staff report. This is my last official act for the city of Los Alamitos. I will still be city attorney for 3-4 more days.
Okay.
But Michael Dott, who is in the audience right there, will take over as of October the 1st. I believe that another attorney in his firm, Kendra Carney, will be sitting with you folks most of the time. But as with Lisa, when Lisa's on vacation, I get to fill in for her. That's why I'm here with you tonight. So please welcome Michael, and I'm sure you will be in good hands. The law firm is a top-notch firm, and Michael is an excellent lawyer.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and welcome aboard. Anything else on that? I don't think. Next, item 7B is the nomination of 2 planning commissioners to sit on a council committee for the zoning update.
Thank you, Chair Andrade. The City Council will soon be diving into doing a zoning code update that'll take about a year to do. They're creating a committee to help them do the process. They're seeking 1 traffic commissioner and 2 planning commissioners to sit on this panel. So we'd like to take nominations from the commission of 2 people to forward to the City Council, and the City Council will consider that at their next meeting.
Okay.
It's about a year and a couple of months commitment. There are 5 scheduled meetings for the committee, and just so you know what the workload is. The committee itself will decide on the time of day that they meet, so that's still up in the air.
Okay.
I'd like to do it.
Would
Whatever.
like to do it?
I'd
Okay.
like to nominate John Riley.
Okay.
Does John accept the nomination?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so we have 1.
I'll nominate Commissioner DeBolt.
Okay, and Commissioner DeBolt, you up for the task?
I'm up for it.
All right, I think we have our 2.
Great, thank you very much.
Moving
That was
right
easy.
along.
Now we're moving.
Something tells me it's going to slow down a little bit after that.
It certainly will.
Okay, so the next item would be item 8A, conditional use permit, 17-03. This is continued consideration of outdoor storage in the planned light industrial PM zone for the Cottonwood Christian Center. So this is a continuance of the proposal.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is available in the audience today. He's revised his drawing to hopefully meet the needs of the commission. This is a continued public hearing. There was much support on the commission last time with a few tweaks and a few twists to the plan. He has brought that plan before you, and I'll allow him and his team to describe that plan. We've got a couple of visuals on here for the plan, but it's much easier to read in your staff report. With that, I will introduce the applicant, and I would recommend that the Planning Commission close the public hearing at the end of testimony because it still is a public hearing now.
Okay.
Okay? Let's go.
Hi. Thanks for having us back. We did take in careful consideration all the comments and worked with the staff, had a meeting with staff, and came back. Our consultants designed what we believe is acceptable, or in our minds. It's putting hedges around or trees to cover or block the view of the storage containers. You can see even the staff has recommended approval of this, so we think we've crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's. Any questions we can answer for you?
Okay. Does anybody up here have any questions for the applicant?
I had thought in our last meeting that we had requested that the gate be changed and the fence. Was that not? Because that's the part that you see from the street the most, in my opinion.
This, the fence,
Because you're not changing that in this new drawing, correct?
no, the fence matches
What's already there?
800 feet
Right.
adjacent to it of the same
We'd like
same
them to
exact
change
look.
that too.
Yeah. So, no, we weren't planning to change the fence.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? Okay.
Technical questions our consultants can answer, but if that's all, then
Yeah, thank you for providing the drawing package.
sure.
We'll go ahead and, at this point, I think we can go ahead and then close the public hearing at this point and bring it back to us. Is that right?
If there's nobody else who wants to be heard.
Yeah, is there anybody else that wanted to speak with regards to this topic? Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing and bring it back. We can get thoughts from the commission.
I've got no comments. I'd move approval.
I'll second it.
Yeah, I like what you guys did. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Approved. Thank you very much. Nice job.
Thank you.
It looks good. Okay, moving right along. Let's see. So this is item 8B. Continued consideration of a 5-unit residential condominium development. Application for tentative tract map, conditional use permit, and site plan review at 3751, 3755 Farquhar Avenue. So this is a continued consideration.
The public hearing has been open for all of the items except for the variance. This is the first time you're actually opening the public hearing for the variance portion of this.
Okay,
As you remember, we didn't have enough notice time to notice the public hearing for the variance portion last time, so it's being continued. So this is a proposal for 5 condominium units at 3751 and 3755 Farquhar Avenue in the city of Los Alamitos. The photo on the screen is the existing site, so you can kind of gain your bearings. You've had a few of these historically, so it helps to see these on the screen to understand which one we're speaking of. And again, that's another shot of the property and the location. And that's the site plan that's been proposed. Front elevations, again, more detail on the site plan. Floor plans. Schematics, more elevations, more detail that you have in your packet. It's been available for the public to review. There's been a new letter introduced. I wanted to put this on the screen so I didn't forget to introduce that letter into the public record. It's coming from a legal representative of the applicant. I'm not sure if the commissioners have read that, but You'll see
When did that come in?
that came in today, about 4:15 via email. About 4:15 via email. So we didn't have a chance to get it to you. I do think we emailed it to you as well, but just in case you didn't have an email, we have a hard copy available to you. There are hard copies in the back of the room, and we all have hard copies for the record. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom to give you a few more details about the changes in the application as presented. You'll see a staff recommendation, you'll see a staff report that has a very detailed description about the opinions on the variance from our legal team that they've applied for. It would certainly be appropriate to start talking about that as well. And we still have the issue of the 100 feet from the R1 zone. As you know, this property is within 100 feet of a R1 zoned property. That R1 zoned property happens to contain a creek, so it's a little bit problematic. It's not what you expect out of an R1 property. And there's and they've applied for a variance to ask for consideration for that. Without the variance, we see this difficulty in approving a project that is that close to an R1 and exceeds our 2-floor limit when you're that close to an R1. As you know, the code says that it's a 2-floor or 30, Tom, is it 35 or 30 feet?
30
30 feet
or 2 floors.
2 floors. And so we've hit some constraints in there as well. In how to handle the hearing today, I think it would be appropriate to hear from the applicant again, then open the variance public hearing and keep the rest of the public hearing open until the commission makes a recommendation. And that'll allow for public testimony to continue and be brought into the record.
Okay.
So with that, I think we'll turn it over to Nick at this point so he can introduce some of the changes on his drawings and walk you through what he's proposing at this time. Thank you. Are these part of the agenda or are these new?
It's just backup information.
Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Commission members and planning staff. As most of you know, my name is Nick Zamvakelis. I'm representing the applicants who happen to be my wife and my mother-in-law. My brother-in-law, Steve Stepakis, is also here, and he's going to speak in a little while. Thank you again for the opportunity to once again address you regarding this proposed project. I'd also like to take just a moment to thank planning staff for their always generous and considerate help throughout this long process. In looking at the thoroughness of tonight's staff reports, I think they've really gone over and above the call of duty, and I'd like to compliment them on their diligence on the detail and exactness of their report. The plans before you tonight represent our best attempts at incorporating the commission's and staff's concerns from all the prior meetings. As you know, we are also requesting a variance for this plan, and Mr. Stepakis is going to speak to that after I'm finished up here. I stand ready tonight to answer your questions about our design, and I look forward to getting the project moving forward. We'd like to get this thing built and create some more comfortable quality housing for people who'd like to live in our city. So some of the changes we've made that we addressed, there was a question brought up at the earlier meeting regarding the backup distance between the unit, Building A and Building B, where we had a curved curb. We've eliminated that and provided a straight 28-foot backup space for all the units. We further detailed, in order to do that, we had to move the private open space for unit number 3 up to a rooftop deck, although we also maintained a private deck that's accessed from the unit's kitchen and family room. So all the units still have a deck off of the kitchen family room, which is not included in the private open space, and 4 out of the 5 units have an exterior yard that is the private open space, with that Unit 3 having the rooftop deck. So we also provided further detail and clarity in terms of the private open space requirements for each unit, further detailed the trash enclosure, clarified dimensions, parking, also clarified the table up there that includes all the square footages, landscape area, floor areas, lot coverage, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, the floor plans in each unit stayed somewhat the same, with the biggest changes happening in that Unit 3 because of the rooftop deck. I feel that those designs are actually better. Obviously, anytime you iterate a design, it gets better and better and better. So in a way, we're happy we had this extra time to perfect the designs. But the flip side of that, of course, is we're delayed in getting the project started. Trying to think what else was needed to be addressed directly. I think those are about the major changes. I'd like to answer any questions you guys might have, or you can kick me out and have Steve come up.
Do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? Anybody? No. Okay. You said you had somebody else that wanted to speak on the...
Yeah, my brother-in-law, Steve.
Okay.
Do you want to hear about the variance now, or do you want to wait till later and just worry about the project?
I think we have to...
You would open the public hearing if this would be an appropriate time to open the public hearing for the variance.
Okay. So yeah, we can go ahead and open the public hearing then for the variance, and we can discuss that matter at this time.
Steve Stepakis, my mother is one of the owners and my sister's the other owner, along with my brother-in-law. We spoke about this a couple months ago, about the flood control easement next to our property across the street. That flood control easement is miszoned. There's no real reason for it to be R1. It could just as easily be zoned R3 because it's equally adjacent to R3 properties. If the zoning map were perfectly consistent, it would be zoned OA, open area, like other flood control areas on the zoning map. If it were zoned OA, we wouldn't need a variance, but it's not. Zoning maps are not precise, exact documents. They are a broad brush tool for identifying general land use. Ideally, in a perfect world, they would be constantly and continually updated and revised. But we don't live in a perfect world. So the Planning Commission must decide certain issues on a case-by-case basis, which is why we're here tonight. We're not asking to build 3 stories within 100 feet of R1 homes. We are proposing to build 120 feet from the R1 homes. The only question you have to decide tonight is, should you treat an R1 zone flood control area exactly the same way you would treat an R1 house? That's it. That's the only question. We've all read the staff report, and I agree with it. I agree that the map is consistent with the general plan, the design is consistent with the general plan, the site is physically suitable for the proposed development, all the requirements of CEQA have been met, the site is physically suitable for the development, the design is not likely to cause substantial environmental damage, the design is suitable for proposed use. All of these have been identified in the staff report. I agree with all these findings. We do differ, though, on one point. As to the variance, staff says that the property does not have any special circumstances whereby the applicant would be denied a privilege enjoyed by other numerous similar properties. I'm going to show that there is, in fact, a special circumstance the 40-foot flood control easement. And I'm going to show you that we are not one of numerous lots that at least 3 other properties similarly situated enjoy the privilege of building 3 stories. If you could please look at the handout I gave you, the Los Alamitos zoning map. And you'll see it where our property is on Farquhar and a darkened area. There are 16 other lots like ours that are similarly situated. They front on Farquhar. After Farquhar, a 60-foot wide street, there's a 40-foot easement for flood control. And then there's R1 homes there. There are only 16 of these. That represents approximately only 2% of all R3 properties in the city. 2% is not numerous. 2% is uncommon. Certainly, 2 out of 100 is a special circumstance by any measure. Next, if you can go to the photos that I gave you on the handout, there's photos of the 3 most recently developed properties that are on Farquhar that are similarly situated to us. And you can see that they are 3 stories. The one right next to us is 3 stories, and it's only 85 feet from an R1 property. Again, we're proposing being 120 feet from an R1 property. One of those properties is actually 4 stories. The 30-something unit development that was built in '85. One next door to us was built in 2005. The other one that you're seeing is a detached townhome. That was built in 2003. That's 3 stories, and it's only 85 feet from an R1 property. So clearly, the properties exist, and we see that they enjoy a 3-story privilege that we should not be denied. Back to the question, are you going to treat the flood control easement the same as a single-family home? What's the spirit of the code here? The spirit of the code is to protect R1 homes from 3-story R3 properties. I don't believe that there's any reasonable argument to protect the flood control area. Again, we're proposing 120 feet from any R1 property. By the strict adherence of the code, all you would be doing is putting a hardship on our property and protecting a flood control easement. If I was an R1 property and I was at the meeting and a project came in and said, I want to build within that 100 feet, I would certainly demand that you meet that 100 feet or exceed it. I would do that. I would never ask for the variance if it was within 100 feet or 120. But if I was a flood control easement and you asked me, should you approve the project and let me build within the 120 feet, I think the flood control easement would probably say, it doesn't matter to me. And I think that's the issue. You're trying to protect, the strict adherence of the code protects the flood control easement. It doesn't protect any R1 properties. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions from the commission? No, thank you.
I have a couple.
Steve, okay. Sorry.
Just regarding the photographs, the one in the to the right, top right, it says 3641 on it. Appears to me to be 2 stories in the front and then 3 stories in the back. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right. And then,
But the 3 stories, again, the 3 stories is 85 feet away from an R1 property. It's 80, and it's 60 foot
All right.
for the street. It's a 15-foot setback, and it's another 10 feet to the 3-story portion. It's 85 feet. They are within the 100-foot.
Okay.
It's already been approved, it's already built, they enjoy a privilege, you should not deny us.
And then the one in the lower left, which is a continuation of, that's on the street side, again, looks to be 2 stories. They have underground parking or semi-underground parking underneath,
It's not underground, it's on grade.
on grade.
That's a story. By any definition, it's a story. By planning code
Okay.
or by building code, it's a story. And that's the same project that has 4-story buildings.
Okay. It's a question. Okay. Yeah. mhm.
Okay, thanks. So to bring it back, do we need to close now? Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this topic?
Bryce Ricks. I live at 3741 Farquhar Avenue, right
Can you
next door to this.
sign in on the sheet, please?
Yeah, where'd the sheet go? I already signed it. It's not here. He took it.
Oh,
Oh, a matter of clarification, am I allowed to speak on the project as a whole or just the variance request?
The public, yeah.
both are open,
all-
right?
Any or all.
Okay, so I'll read a letter I prepared. My name is Bryce Ricks. I live at 3741 Farquhar Avenue, directly next to this proposed project. Our family purchased this property in 2010. I've grown up in Los Alamitos most of my life, attending Los Alamitos High School, and now choosing to raise my family in this community. I'd like to thank the commission for the opportunity to speak today, to voice my questions and concerns. I have read the reports posted online and agree with most of the things that have been said and would like to add the following. I support property owner rights, and I understand that something will get done with this property that is in need of improvement. I will also acknowledge that we own a 3-story townhome with 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, which was built in 2005. Our house, if brought to this commission today, would most likely be turned down. However, there are some differences in our home and the planned project next door that are subtle yet important. Our property is directly across the storm channel, more so than this project. We do not have neighbors directly to the east of us. That is a building that is owned and operated by Frontier Communications now. There are no neighbors there. We also have large trees that shade our property and obscure it from the ground. I have not seen any landscaping plans for this development, and based on the project on Howard Avenue they've done, it may leave something to be desired. It is also my understanding that our property only needed a variance and not a conditional use permit to be built. This project needs both. The developer of our complex also told me that our house was denied an additional half bathroom to prevent overpopulating the units. Has that even been considered by this commission? And looking closely at the plans, I see the trash unit there. That is almost directly in front of our back neighbor's front doors. It should be on the alley. It is our intent to make sure that nothing is done to adversely affect us personally and financially. In reviewing the plans and exploring the developer's most recent project on Howard Avenue, our main concerns can be expressed as the following. Size and scope, 5 units are too many. 4 units are more appropriate for the area. This is in line with most of the units on Farquhar, and it will lessen the impact and congestion in the neighborhood. Additionally, the 3rd story will negatively impact us by eliminating views and our sense of privacy. Both were motivating factors in the purchase of our home. Since the development is set very close to our property line and not the neighboring apartment complex, we believe a 5th unit and 3rd story may negatively impact the value of our home. It is our understanding for the developer to do this, they need both a CUP and a variance to current laws and regulations. If the plans require both of these special permits, it's clear the project is overreaching what is advisable for the neighborhood. Parking, I understand that each unit will have a 2-car garage, but in reality, many only park a single vehicle or less while using the garage for storage. This area is more compacted by the fact that Farquhar Avenue has parking only on one side of the street. And with the intersection at Rochelle Street and multiple curb cuts along Farquhar Avenue, street parking becomes very difficult. Furthermore, the traffic along Farquhar Avenue is only getting worse. Many times, traffic has backed up from Los Alamitos Boulevard to our residents, making street parking difficult and dangerous. As an issue we have faced, and also an issue we have faced in our residents, is owners renting out the space to multiple single individuals, with each that have many cars, creating real parking issues. Additionally, the alley does not provide relief, and it is already congested with vehicles and garages used for storage facilities. As the project currently stands, potential for economic harm done to our property is very real. It is our plea that the Commission enforce the current laws and does not issue the CUP and variance. We hope that property owner residents' wishes will be held above developers and targeted returns on investment. We fear the precedent this will set if the variance is granted for future development along Farquhar Avenue. We must not let the decision of the past cloud the present. We will gladly work with the developer to mitigate these issues and possibly create some shared access to improve the development. In conclusion, we live here and want to do what's best for both current and future residents, not developers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pardon me? Oh, yeah, is, for our records? No? Oh, it's on record, actually. Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on the topic? Okay. At this time, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on both the, well, there's three open, actually, right? Tract map, the CUP, and the variance. We'll close the public hearing on.
And site plan review.
And the site plan review.
There's 4.
Close all 4 of them, sorry. And bring it back to the commission to discuss. Anybody have any comments to start?
Oh. Just a couple corrections with respect to the comments regarding the flood control channel. It's not an easement. Okay, it's owned by the Orange County Flood Control District. It is part of the subdivision. When the original tract was subdivided, that parcel was included. Whether it existed at that time, I don't know. Okay, that was but the but the flood control is within the subdivision. It has its own it has its own lots. They're lettered lots, and which is what is required in a subdivision where it's not a buildable lot. Okay, so it is within the R1 zone. It's within that subdivision, and so it's not an erroneous zoning as was referenced in one of the letters. It was included when the tract was subdivided. So it is R1 zoned property. That's a given. So that's just to clarify that. And this is regarding the variance. I just want to focus on the variance. And I've got a handout here, and I raised a question didn't raise a question, I made a comment in the July meeting that I was of the opinion that according to our code, when we are involved in a subdivision with a tract, with a tentative map, there are limitations and prohibitions on deviations from our site development standards. And so I think it can be a little complicated. I got a handout that I think I brought enough of them that will detail what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is I don't even believe that we can allow can even consider a variance when we are involved with in a subdivision. If this were an apartment complex, it would be different. You could apply for a variance and you could consider a variance. But this is a tract. We're creating new parcels, and when you create new parcels, it appears to me that the spirit of this code is, or this prohibition, is that these new parcels, you cannot be creating non-conforming uses and parcels at their inception. They have to be conforming, okay? And that's the reason for it. And so I'm going to hand these down. I'm sure I brought enough. Yeah, I did. See if there's enough there. And all I'm going to do is just refer to the, I'll just start at the findings for for the design of the subdivision. And that is on, that's on page,
Is this,
let me see.
Attorney, is the applicant allowed to have a copy of this?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm sorry, did I not?
The applicant's asking for a copy.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, good, okay, great. There you go. So, if we could look at page 6 of 10 on in our staff report, I'm gonna go through this. And look at the findings. And you'll have to have the, look at number 9. It says the design and improvements of the proposed subdivision are suitable for the uses proposed, and the subdivision can be developed in compliance with the applicable zoning regulations. And if you need to be looking at the in our staff report, it doesn't have the ending sentence. We included that, correct?
We emailed that to you, yeah.
Everybody has that. So it says we have to comply with the zoning regulations pursuant to 16.10.090. Okay, so the design and the improvements of the subdivision are suitable for the uses proposed and developed in compliance with the applicable zoning regulations. I'm just going to march through this. So what is the subdivision? What is the proposed subdivision? The definition of a subdivision, which is on that handout right on down, it's a division of units of improved or unimproved land. And if you go continue into the next paragraph, a subdivision includes a condominium project. All right? And if you look in a condominium project, as defined in our code, is a real property, including the structures, that are to be held in a common interest, and also a space that's held privately. Okay? You don't subdivide airspace. You subdivide the lot or a parcel, and if you're doing a condominium, you're creating a structure that surrounds the space. Okay? And that is the development. So, you've got the subdivision, and it's so suitable for the uses proposed, and the uses proposed is a condominium, and that the development can be developed in compliance with the applicable zoning regulations pursuant to 16.10.090. And I've included that. That's on this. The second paragraph it's under there, item C, and it says a tentative map shall not be approved if it is apparent that any proposed parcel cannot be developed to its intended use without the modification of site development standards. A modification of site development standards is a variance. All right? And it cannot be developed. What does developed mean? Since we don't have a definition in our code, you go to the MAP Act, and development is right underneath the definition of a subdivision. And a development means the uses to which the land, which is the subject of the map, that's the parcel, shall be put, the buildings to be constructed on it, and all alterations of the land and construction incident thereto. So this notion that it doesn't apply to the structure is not correct. The variance, or this section pertains to the structure, which is the boundaries of the airspace, and that cannot be developed without a modification of our site development standards, which in this case is the variance. We have one other finding. I think that's sufficient right there, actually. I can go even take this even further to the code up above where it says in 1612.030, I will take it further. It says that subdivisions shall be designed in such a manner that all proposed lots, that would be the lot that you end up with on the tract map. It'll be one lot, lot one, and you'll have all these other units within that lot. They have to comply with the applicable zoning regulations in a manner that will permit the establishment of the proposed uses. Again, the proposed uses are it's the condominiums, without further deviations or variances as stated in, and it takes you back to the one we just read, 1610.090. Everything points back to that one. And just to take it a little further, it talks about further deviations and variances, which seems to imply that you could do a deviation or a variance. If you go to 16.12 in your code, and that's on page, it's in the subdivision code. And go to page 327. Okay, if you don't mind, I want to take you back, if you don't mind, go back to 321. It's the very beginning, called Standards of Design. And you're going to see a whole host of sections at the very top, starting with 1612.010. And it goes all the way down to 1612.280. That's on page 321 in your back. You don't
I
have it?
started 351.
It's on the screen, Art.
Oh, you have it. Okay. Okay, so it lists all the sections, beginning with 1612, and it has to do with conformance of design. The first two or three are consistency with the general plan, compliance with zoning, which is the one I'd read, and then it goes to boundary lines. And then from there on, it goes on down. But the important thing is to look at page 326 now, 1612.280, which are your allowed deviations from your standards of design. And this all has to do with the actual land, the parcel. Okay, it has nothing to do with the improvements, okay? And you see it begins at 1612. You can deviate, you may approve or conditionally approve maps which deviate from the standards of design, this I'm reading A, in the following sections. It starts at 050 and goes all the way down through 260. So you can deviate, but you cannot deviate from the first three. Consistency with the general plan, 020, compliance with the zoning, which is what I just read, and boundary lines. You can't deviate from your boundary lines are your boundary lines of the lot. Okay, we can't change that. So that's the first area that you can deviate, and then you can't go any further than that. And that goes back to 090, which says you cannot deviate from the standards of design. You can't, if it's apparent that you cannot approve it without a modification, you can't approve it. Can't even consider the variance, in my opinion. So that's where I'm at with this. I guess I would ask the city attorney the question, am I reading it right?
That was basically going to be my question, is at that point, based on, in the staff report, showing the variance and the analysis is different than what we're seeing that was just read. So maybe you could elaborate on that, possibly.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with Commissioner DeBolt.
That's fine.
It's not the first time,
Not the first time.
but it is the last time. Probably.
Yes. All right.
16.12.280 seems specifically designed to allow deviations from the standards of design contained in the sections listed in A, which are
Right.
lots and parcels. It's my opinion that a condominium division is basically a parcel map situation. It is a subdivision. And so I'm not sure that you need to strictly keep to the, you cannot grant a variance in approving a subdivision. Whether you should grant a variance is another question.
Right.
That's up to you
Right.
to decide whether it's appropriate under the law, under the code. The gentleman who was speaking before, his contention with regard to other parcels that have privileges that his parcel doesn't have, the zoning is different. So, I think that's just something that the commission needs to decide, and the city council if it's appealed. So I don't think that you absolutely are prohibited from granting a variance on this.
It didn't appear that these properties were zoned different based on what I was seeing. I could be wrong, but the properties all seem to be zoned the same. And so that was my next question is, these properties, it's clear that they're 33 stories, which you would think would be a minimum
Can it
of.
be set back?
I wouldn't agree on that 3641, because it doesn't turn into 3 stories until it has additional square footage back. It's set, the third story set back.
It is set back, but according, now, I'm
we
just,
don't-
allegedly, on
Yeah.
his measurements, it's 85 feet, so discount that. But
Okay.
I'm looking at, so that one may or may not be within the 100 feet. But according to what the applicant has stated, if we were to take that information without checking it ourselves, were there any of these that were granted any type of either a variant, or what would allow these to be approved and built versus this one on the 30-foot rule?
I would have to research each property and get back to you on
Okay.
that. I mean, I have to look in the data and the approvals and the minutes of the meeting that was held and what was discussed at the time and compare it to the code at the time.
Okay.
As you knew, 2006 brought us a new code. I think the dates of approval on these were all prior to 2007, 8. Could have been prior to 2006, I think I heard.
2005 was the last one I
So
heard.
we'll have to do that comparison and analysis for you when we bring it back.
Okay. That would be important to me.
Okay.
Me
Anyway,
too.
to see that, how those were allowed. And actually would make a big difference in my decision. So, okay. Thank you for the clarification. Any other comments on the property?
It's on the variance, or are we talking about?
Well, we can.
Should we handle these one at a time?
Well, if I could add a little bit of wisdom, if you can't get past the variance, I'm not sure you want to micromanage the project except for
Right.
to address some new concerns that have been brought forward by a neighboring resident. I think that would be applicable as well.
Right.
So I think at this point with the variance, then it's recommended to staff that we maybe get the information from those other properties that the applicant has brought to our attention
Ma-
to find out. I know, it's interesting, I mean,
I'm not sure.
yeah, but so, anyway, okay.
Well,
Thanks.
let's make sure we're managing the meeting, and that anyone likes to speak
Yeah.
would come to the podium and ask the chair if he can speak.
Right,
Can we continue? Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so let's go ahead and continue. So, go ahead.
I was gonna say, my thought is that I'm not sure if, I mean, those properties are those properties, but I'm not sure if we really have to worry about
Right.
how those were done at the time and whether that really even makes a difference. I mean, I'm not sure if we want to go down that road. I think we're maybe going backwards rather than forwards.
I mean, they were all built a while ago.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of,
Yeah.
they're all irrelevant now.
They either have a variance or they don't.
Right.
If they have a variance, then that's what we're here deciding right now. If they don't, then somehow they slip through the process, and that's a problem, right?
Right.
That creates issues for us now, but it doesn't really, I don't see it as having a lot of bearing on what we're trying to decide right now.
No.
I have a couple other things I'd like to inquire about, and this kind of goes to the city attorney, letting me know kind of what kind of leeway we have. My interpretation of that flood control channel is similar to the applicant's. I get what you're saying, Art, that was zoned that way with intent. But if you look at the definition of, in our zoning code 17.08.010, and they define R1 single-family residential zoning specifically as parcels designed to accommodate single-family dwellings on individual parcels.
Right.
Those lots obviously don't meet development standards for R1.
Right.
So they're not, in my mind, that shouldn't be R1. It doesn't fit the definition. It's in the R1 zone, but is it intended to be residential property? So I guess my question to the city attorney is, is that justification, does that give us enough leeway to grant the variance? Or do we need to look at all the other stuff that the applicants put in front of us about them being, in the smaller percentage or whatever? Because in my mind, I look at that and I'm like, that's not R1 property. It probably shouldn't be in the R1 zone.
Right. In my opinion, the reference to R or R1 is the zoning, not the purpose of the zoning district, but the zoning. If it's zoned R1 and it's erroneously zoned R1, then perhaps the zoning should be changed. But as long as it's R1, I think you have to apply the standard of it's within 100 feet of an R1 zone.
Okay. Then the second question I have, and this goes back to our code and some of the issues with the code, is we have this whole 3-story, 2-story thing.
That's crazy.
What does it matter? I mean, we're talking about a 30-foot structure.
It's 30 foot, doesn't matter if it's 2.
How does it impact anything differently, whether it's 2 stories or 3 stories? To density, right?
No, I mean, just from a practical sense, if you have 2 stories, it's 2 stories and 30 feet.
Or,
No, and. They can go 2 stories and 30 feet high, if they wish. Or they can do 2 stories and keep it at whatever 2 stories typically is. Okay? And the purpose for that, the distinction I see is that you stand on ground level and you go up, if it's 10 feet, you go up 10 feet and you have the next floor. And you stand there and your windows are there. Now, if he wants to have a 20-foot ceiling to go up 30 feet, he can go ahead and put, a 30-foot ceiling. But you're still standing 10 feet off the ground. And if you're looking out, you go into the second story. Oh, yeah, that's right. You'd be 10 feet up on the second story. And now you're looking down. And the intent, obviously, is line of sight into people's homes like the other fellow was talking about there. And so if he wants to build high ceilings, if he wants to go 15 feet on the ground floor, and then 15 feet up you have your floor and you're standing there, and go up another 15 feet, you got your 30 feet. But the idea is if you go 3 stories, your first floor, second floor, then you're standing on the 3rd floor, looking down. And so that, I think, is why it's 2 stories within 100 feet. It has to do with line of sight, and we had that issue with Dr. Chang's dental building years ago when he built that right against the houses in Carrier Row, and made him bring it down and do, other stuff because of the house. Of course, those were a lot closer than 100 feet, but nonetheless, we did that. So I think that's the reason. So it doesn't matter that it's 2 stories or 3 stories, yeah, because it's where you're standing. You're either standing 10 feet off the ground or you're standing 20 feet off the ground. That's the difference.
Or 15 if you made the
Or
first
15 and
floor.
15.
Yeah, that's design dependent though, right?
Well,
So,
I'm just telling you that's
Maybe 20
that's
and 10.
that's the
Right.
difference, and that's the purpose of it, and the solution is change the zone, or just I mean that would be a solution, but right now, here and now, we have what we have. If they wanted to change, go through a zone change for that strip, then that would be the process, and then come back, get that through, and then come back in, and
You're talking about for the flood control channel, or
if
you're
that's what you
talking
want,
about?
if that would be the only solution, I mean, that I see, to eliminate that requirement of being within 100 feet. If you change the flood control zone to a different zone, other than R1, I don't know that you could, because you'd have to segregate that strip out legally, wouldn't you? You'd have to create however that would be done. I mean, to me, that's the only way you could do it. Other than that, you're going to have to go use a variance. And so then the question becomes, before us tonight, does the property qualify for a variance? And that's the issue and that's probably where we are right now,
Right.
is to just to discuss that. So, and I think the staff has done a good report. If you're going to have a variance, there has to be something that is unique about the physicality of the lot, of the property, that denies it the benefits of other like-zoned properties. And so how is this lot physically any different from any of the other lots that are undeveloped, or, that are going down the street? It's the same. I mean, the staff has pretty well laid it out, and I don't see that there is any difference physically in that lot. And if you can't get to that, then we can't. I mean, a variance has everything to do with the, it's on number 1 here. There are special circumstances applicable to the property, its location, shape, size, surroundings, or topography, so that a strict application of this zoning code denies the property owner privileges enjoyed by other property owners in the vicinity and under identical zoning districts. So that's all of his neighbors. And that we have 1 or 2, especially the one next door, which we've all been around long enough to know that that one should have never been built. Okay, how that got through, I have no idea, but it got through. Somebody was asleep at the switch, and that got through. I mean, I complained about it, and I was not on the commission or on the council or anything. I drove by it when they were framing it up, and I could see they don't have enough for a turning radius. It's too close. And I called the community development director at the time, not Mr. Mendoza, and mentioned it to him, and he said, "Oh no, that distance is from this distance," and I'm going, whatever. And I was on I wasn't paying attention then. That was it. I did my thing, and so that shouldn't happen. And the fact that that one got by doesn't make it right that I don't think we're setting precedent. I don't think that sets a precedent. I mean, each one stands on its own, and from my perspective, they don't meet the conditions for the requirements for a variance. I mean, just on number 1. And then,
And Steve, number one, that's the city attorney's opinion, right?
The city attorney, Lisa wrote it, but Carrie has certainly reviewed it and supports it. The city attorney is challenged of making the variance that there's anything specific about this lot that's different than other lots. You know, to use a exaggerated example about a variance is often used when a parcel has special circumstances to it. You know, we don't have a lot of that in California, but imagine a creek going through a property and not through your next door neighbors. Why would you need special privilege compared to their property next door? Well, you have a creek, or you have a hillside, or you have something that makes your lot special than other lots with the same like zoning, where you're not enjoying the same privilege as them. That's the exaggerated example that we are all taught in variance school. And variances are required to meet those legal findings. Now, sometimes there's public testimony that can help beef up those findings, and you include that. But I'm not seeing a lot of that tonight. And I agree with Lisa. It's very difficult to make a finding on this property that he's not able to enjoy the privileges of other properties.
So, and I think I would agree with that relative to the properties adjacent to him, but all the other properties in the R3 zone don't have to meet that same standard.
Correct, they don't. They're lucky to not be near an R1 zone creek, but there are some on Lexington that are adjacent to an R1 property.
They're adjacent to R1 properties, but I guess I would say that because I kind of see this drainage ditch as a special circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's not homes,
Yeah.
and I see that this would potentially apply to all those properties, right? So
All the ones in front of the drainage ditch, yeah.
right. Now, if there was a drainage ditch and the homes were within that 100 feet still, then no, I would say that, hey, that's just what the deal is. But that's not the case here. So even the other R3 properties that have to meet this standard don't have this artificial R1 drainage ditch buffer situation. So I guess to me it's looking at, okay, we have a letter here from an attorney that said, hey, that comes out to 2%, right? These guys are in the 2% on the R3. Is that a small enough fraction to indicate that this is a special circumstance?
I don't think the comparison is appropriate. You know, the 2% of all R3 isn't really the standard. We're talking about the percentage, perhaps, of properties that are adjacent to the drainage ditch, not all R3s in the whole city. So, you know, 2%, you know, that's pretty low, but here we're talking about, I don't know, 1 out of 7 or something like that.
What's interesting is if in yours and mine opinion, if that was zoned appropriately, this wouldn't even be a topic of discussion at this point. In other words, if that piece was either zoned open area or, you know, whatever it would be deemed appropriate that's not R1, the discussion's over. So it's.
I have another observation, and that this is from my experience in other cities, but, you know, typically or often, a variance is based upon the inability to develop a property at all. You might have a flag lot that can't meet development standards because it's a triangular shape, or doesn't have the width, maybe in the back it does and in the front it doesn't. Here, they clearly can build at least 4 units without running into this issue. So that's just my observation.
And I agree with you, because we're looking at a variance, but we don't have anything but a drawing. This isn't built yet. But if you remember the dental property down on Florista, right by Precious Life? Okay. That one required a variance because it was an unusual property and it was hard to do anything in there. So that would make absolute sense right there. Just as much as there's a little house by me, they can't really build a house on it because it's so out of date for the area that it would require a variance to do anything if they ever did develop that. This is a lot that has a concept right now. And it's not built, it's got nothing else going on, and we're asking for a variance on a plan that right now is only on paper, and that makes it difficult for me.
Well,
If I could, Mr. Chairman, you had you wanted to, I was able to look up 3741, the neighboring property.
oh, yes?
There are no variances on that property. No variance was issued on that property. It was a CUP and a track map. I have the staff report here. It's a 3-page staff report. Remember those?
And when was that?
2005, I think it's in.
Mr. Rick's address.
After me.
That was for you.
The speaker that spoke earlier was Mr. Ricks, and he spoke about 3741 Farquhar.
Right.
That was approved in 2002. I'm not going to name commissioners. It was done with,
Not me.
it was done with a CUP and a tentative track map. No variance.
And that is reported as not more than 100 feet from the,
Correct. It's not more than 100 feet.
right?
No, it's shouldn't have been built.
It's the same situation.
Same situation, shouldn't have happened.
Okay.
That's the gray part. I'm not sure the same code existed at the time. That would take a little research.
I think it did.
Right,
Not sure.
right.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's hard to figure out which sentences were added to 2006 or just carried over from pre-2006.
Okay.
Well, I can tell you Pepper Tree was prior to 2006. Pepper Tree was back in the
Yeah.
70s or 8.
But that's just one I was able to clarify to help the commission along. I'm going to start looking for 3641 as well.
Okay, so we seem to be stuck for a moment here on the variance. Is there?
I mean, I don't think it matters about the prior variance. I mean, in my
No,
opinion, I
it
agree with them.
No,
that-
I'm with you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was more curious than anything
yeah.
else. Yeah, no, I understand.
I don't. I agree with Carrie that there are no, they can build on this lot. They might not be able to build 5 units, but they could build 4 and not need a variance, so.
The problem is that the door opens for any other property along that site,
Oh.
and there's a lot of congestion there. And we open the door for potential, congestion on steroids. I mean, at some point, we have to take a look at what makes sense for not just the lot, but the entire,
The community.
the entire community, and trying to get through there, and the congestion and the continuum building. I mean, it's gonna happen. As those properties become turned over, that's gonna continue to happen. There's no doubt about it.
Sure.
And that's kind of where I am with it as well. So,
But even at that time, they're gonna stand on their own at that time too, you know what I mean, whatever the thoughts are of the commission and so forth. You know
But
what I
they
mean?
can
Those
also-
those newer lots, like, just because we do this one doesn't mean someone else is gonna be able to do theirs,
no.
so.
But
Right, but they can also build to within what they're allowed and not need the variance.
But, and really, this variance isn't a matter of 4 or 5, it's actually has to do with the height. So,
Right.
but so they could easily come back with a 5-unit design that's not 30 feet.
well, it has to just be 2 stories.
Right,
However high they want to go beyond that is up to them, up to 30 feet.
right, because I think by code, 5 units can go on that parcel.
This part,
Well, and as I read the code, isn't it 2 stories within the 100 feet? Otherwise,
Yeah,
Right.
Go to
then-
the-
yeah, it has
If
to
they
be
go
2
back
stories
there, it
within
can
the
go
100
back,
feet.
go up again.
right, they could, yeah, if they wanted to go 30 feet back,
They
in
just
other
have
words,
to
on their
move back.
property.
You just have to move back and then go up.
Yeah.
Correct.
Can I just say something?
Do we have to open it back up?
No.
Or
No. you
No,
can-
okay.
He
You can
represents
go
the
ahead, okay.
applicant.
Go
It's
ahead, thank
fine.
you.
I'm not going to try to convince you or repeat all my arguments, but one of the commissioners said something interesting. There might be a design solution that maybe there's windows that don't face R1 properties or some some kind of design solution that we could come up with so we don't have to bang our heads up against this variance request. Is that a possibility? I'm looking for direction.
So, yeah, no, I think that's actually where I was kind of leaning, or the discussion just came up, was that what if there was a way to design it to where we don't have to have this discussion about 100 feet, that if they're going to go 30 feet, that it goes clearly on their property from 100 feet from the R1 zone, which is the channel, and they figure out a way to get that back with a different design that meets the requirement.
I think what he's saying is
I know what he's saying.
To address the sightlines issue, let's eliminate
Windows or what have you.
sightlines
right.
within
But
that. Right.
I think
Yeah.
you'd have to eliminate the rooftop deck, too.
It
Right.
doesn't have, well, I think, to answer that, I would say you could not go higher than 2 stories within the 100 feet. So you then would set back,
Correct.
and then you can go up
Right.
to 3 stories.
That's-
It's 2 stories for whatever that distance is, and then it steps up, similar to what
Correct.
you see in the photos.
Right, that was-
Whether they're 85, regardless of the distance, if you want to see in the photo what it would look like,
They still set it.
it would look like 2 stories here, and then behind it,
Correct.
it's 3. I mean, now how far back you go, you only have to be back, that 3rd story can go up at 100 feet
Right.
when you're 100 feet away. If that's 20 more feet, it's 20 more feet, and then you go up.
Right.
So I don't know if that's not to design the building, but I mean, if it's a
plot.
living room and a whatever on the ground floor, and then you're stepping up to the higher. But that's what I would say. So are we,
I've clarified another one of those properties. 3641 does not have a variance, but it's also not across from the channel.
Oh, it's not. Okay.
all right,
It's almost near the commercial property.
Oh, right.
Got
It's
it.
right next door to one.
Okay.
so you ready for a motion?
Well,
Yeah.
we did maybe send it back to staff to work with the applicant to come up with
I don't think there's any
No, I
working,
think we should.
nothing to work with.
if they can redesign.
On a
their-
variance?
If they can redesign their.
Oh, no, this is for the variance.
This is for the variance.
This is just for the variance.
Right.
The
We would have
variance
to-
is
Yeah,
just-
so we would have to, yeah, they would have.
We don't
to-
need a variance
we
if
would
they
need
move it
actually-
back.
Right, yeah,
Right.
exactly. Okay.
Right.
They wanted to make, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
Can they vote on the variance and deny a variance? Sounds like the sentiment is to deny it.
They would instruct us to draft an appropriate resolution for that.
Yeah, we don't have a
Could they
resolution.
approve the project?
Right.
Could they approve the project with the condition that we're 2 stories within the 100 feet?
No,
No,
there's too much
because-
redesign to be done, and
Right.
they're really looking at these properties. They want to make sure that it meets all sections of the code. I suspect that they would want to see the site plan again,
Correct.
if it was tweaked.
Yeah,
Correct.
yes, and we actually don't have anything in our information to approve as far as a resolution at this point, at least on the variance right now. And I don't think on any of them, actually.
Correct. You would give us guidance of what you would like to see. In this case, based on the sentiment I've heard, is you'd like staff to bring back a resolution of denial for the variance, and
With
We should vote on
with
that.
with the
Right?
with a recommendation for a redesign to meet the code
to meet
Oh,
the
that's-
code,
Yes.
without the variance.
without the
Right.
variance. So,
Doesn't
I'll
give
make
us
but
any-
we don't have to vote on that. I don't. Do we have? We don't have to vote on that, do we?
I think to make it crystal clear, it
Make-
would help. I mean,
Okay.
Michelle's certainly here to take a roll call for you if that's what you would like to do.
Yeah, no, we can do that. So we'd like to make a recommendation to have deny the variance, a denial for the variance, and work with the applicant to come up with a design that falls within or meets the code.
I'll second that.
Okay? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed?
All pose.
Okay.
You're
Go
not
ahead
going
and
to
do that.
consider the rest of the project.
Now, we talked about.
So we're not going to go forward on the rest of it that we can go forward on.
What?
They are able to
and-
leave the hearing open for that portion, though, so it doesn't have to be renoticed.
Right.
But the more a plan is tweaked, the more the public deserves renoticing. You know, because they could have had an opportunity to look at the project, and be okay with the project, but if it changes, they may not be okay with the project. So you certainly have that confusion I just added to the mix.
So should we keep it closed at that point?
I think
So
you,
that
I would recommend you keep it open, but instruct council staff to renotice it
Renotice.
anyways.
Okay, I see.
We'll cover both bases.
Okay,
Cleaner that way.
okay. So we need to keep the public hearing open then for the tract map, the site plan, and
CUP.
the CUP with direction to renotice for the public hearing
Correct.
on that. Okay?
Are you going to address,
Go ahead.
just for the benefit of our getting some direction here on the rest of the project, can you address the rest of the project so we can move forward?
Yes, Steve, are we able to have a discussion here
Not a
with
vote.
respect to the rest of it, or do we need to actually wait for them to come back with
I think you would want to go down the line of the commissioners, and each commissioner provide a list of concerns you have, subject matters, based on comments you've heard tonight, and make sure that that applicant addresses those concerns when they come back, just like you did with Cottonwood. That was easy. You addressed, you came
Right.
to you came to consensus of what your issue were, you provided them to the developer came back to you.
I like that.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
So start with one end and go down the other.
Here, and any concerns that you want to address for them to, in their revised plan, to possibly review or come back to?
Okay, first, I have a few. The first is what I saw, what was before us was still the lack of a second covered parking space that is 10 by 20. Okay, so that's the first one. Also, there is no recycle bin as required by our code and by the Public Resources Code, and a condition number 35 in the CUP. So we need a second enclosure, second recycle enclosure, not a bin, just an enclosure for recycle that meets the code. I have a concern regarding private open space on a roof. I know my grandkids couldn't go up there. But I would say that the definition, I would refer the applicant to the definition of private open space and its location, which is to be adjacent to the unit. That's required, that's one of the, it has to be open to the sky and adjacent to the property or to the unit. And on top, I don't think on top of is adjacent. And I mean, and on top of the roof goes to another host of things. Are you going to have a fence up there to keep children out of there? I mean, to me, there's a whole host of other issues with that, but for me, just stick to the code. And then the other issue, I noticed on the plan that the landscaping along the east wall was eliminated. What little, along the east wall, that was eliminated. And I don't know if, and it was, it was eliminated. And then another concern that I have is, it's not showing on our plans, but it has to do with placement of like the the mechanical equipment, AC. Can't be in the front setback, needs to be on the side or somewhere else. And that's about it.
Trash enclosure, since it was brought up by the other gentleman, maybe we could look at that. I don't know if it can be fixed or not, but let's take a look at that.
The location to be further away from the adjacent property?
Yeah,
Okay.
Closer to the alley, I think is what.
it would be nice.
Yeah.
I think, and that, most of what already the Commissioner DeBolt already expressed.
You guys have addressed my concerns as
Mine
well.
too.
I'm good.
Yeah, okay.
So,
You've provided feedback? You've made a motion. You're free to go on to the next
I
item.
think, thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
We'll move this to the next meeting then, right?
Yes.
Thanks.
What is the date of that?
I'm sorry, the date?
Mention the specific date. It's date and time.
Somebody help me on that one?
Yeah, I'll get a calendar up.
Okay.
It'll be October 25th
At 7 o'clock p.m.
at 7 p.m. in this room.
What number is it?
I bet you will. I'm surprised you're not already there.
Do you want to break?
Steven?
Yes.
I think I'm okay. Do you think we could actually rearrange and just go ahead? I think most of the people here are for item 8E.
Survey the people and get agreement of your commission, and you're welcome to rearrange the agenda.
It looks like
willing to accommodate whatever.
most are here for that, I think. You guys okay with that?
Fine.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to adjust this agenda just a little bit and move to item 8E for the moment, which is consideration of a 50-unit condominium development application for tentative tract map, conditional use permit, and site plan review at 3311 Sausalito Street. Do we get a staff report on this one?
Yes, you will. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're closing all the
I'm sorry, wait,
documents
but-
we had.
And before we do that, do you still need that date? Do we need a
they
record?
got it.
You got it? You got
We already read it
Okay.
for the record. Okay. Don't look at my graphics. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Tonight, we present to you the first meeting of probably at least 2 hearings regarding the 50-unit condominium development proposed by Olson Company on Sausalito Avenue, just west of Chestnut Avenue and east of Oak. It's a site of the old Cottonwood Church site. Cottonwood Church owns the property, and it was previously zoned industrial up to a couple of years ago in the general plan. We rezoned the property to residential, and now the development community has noticed and are filing applications to develop on those parcels in that area. I want to explain this is a complicated project. This is a bigger project than what our commission is used to. Staff is sensitive to that. You don't look at these documents as much as we do. We've had them on our desks for a few months, going through different variations and reiterations back and forth with the developer, but you've only had these in your lap for a week. So we are sensitive to that, and that's why we've provided this in kind of a preview fashion tonight for you to wrap your arms around it, listen to the professionals and the applicant that have worked on the project, hear from their perspective of why they designed this project and what they hope to achieve with this project. It also gives you a chance to absorb the environmental document. A very important part of reviewing a project is the CEQA analysis. And again, we can't expect you to be experts in that CEQA document and all the traffic studies, noise studies, hydrology studies attached to it within 7 days. So much like the Whole Foods project, we're taking this in a slower manner than we usually do with projects because it is more complicated. So my apologies if that's not normal, that's not acceptable, but we think it's appropriate to do for our commission. What you have is I'm switching between computers. Again, it's on the Cottonwood site. They propose 50 units. These units range in size from 1,300 square feet up to, what, 21, Tom? Yes. 2,100 square feet. These are not 2-bedroom apartments. These are full-size homes. You'll see the different varieties of open space areas they've proposed, different parking arrangements they've made. You have site plans, floor plans that are a little more specific and have square footages on them, roof planes, cross sections, elevations. I'm just going, for the audience sake, I'm just going through the PowerPoint presentation, providing some kind of hint at the documents. Again, it has a tentative track map that's applied for as well with it. We're introducing a letter that you may or may not have seen before. It's on your desk. It's from their legal counsel, Rutan and Tucker. So we provided that. The reason it's on the screen is just to remind me to make sure I introduce it to the record. I don't mean anything by putting it on the screen except for that. So environmental-wise, an initial study was conducted on this property to determine that while the project could have a significant effect on the environment, there will not be such an effect because all potential significant impacts could be mitigated. So then it becomes a mitigated negative deck. The mitigated negative deck was prepared using their air quality and greenhouse gas reports, their phase 1 report, their WQMP, which is his water quality management plan, a noise study, a geotechnical report, a draft final response plan, hydrology, and a traffic impact analysis, often called a TIA, TIS. The initial study was available for a 30-day review period beginning August 2nd through Friday, September 1st, and the city received 7 comments, all from agencies, none from private citizens. Those agencies were Rossmore Los Alamitos Sewer District, Orange County Sanitation District, Caltrans, Orange County Public Works, Orange County Transportation Authority, Orange County Fire Authority, and Native Heritage Commission. At the time of this report was drafted, the city has not received comments from the general public. Again, you may hear some speakers tonight, but we haven't, at our desk, we haven't had phone calls or concerns from the general public. In an attached addendum to the environmental document, which you received in your box, in your white box, there's a response to comments that have been developed back to those agencies who made comments, and you'll have to have a chance to read those and consider those as well. In regards to the mitigation measures that are proposed with the project, there's also a mitigation monitoring report that is up for consideration by the commission as well. It shows how they'll be mitigating those issues, and it's kind of a tracking device to show how they do that. We use it as a checklist during construction and development of a project. Staff still has concerns with this project. We've worked with the developers for some time, trying to get on the same page with them. We continue to not be on the same page regarding front setbacks, tandem parking and/or guest parking, open space, lack of amenities, and the intensity of the development. And again, I use that word specifically. I'm not talking about the density of the project. I'm talking about the intensity of the project. So those concerns are represented in the staff report. They're part of the public record. You may have your own concerns tonight. New concerns may be introduced to the public tonight. So I think I would recommend that you have the applicant start their presentation. Then once the applicant is done presenting their show to the commission, then I would open the public hearing for all items that they're applying for tonight, which is a tentative track map, CUP, and site plan review. Thanks, Tom. So very similar to the last one. No variances are requested at this time. And with that, again, provide the applicant a opportunity to give a presentation, open the public hearing, take some public testimony, and then the commissioners will deliberate, question, and provide comments on the project, and provide direction to the applicant and staff, much like you did with the last project. With that, I'll turn it over to the chair and introduce the Olson Company to provide their presentation. They provided us a PowerPoint that they'll be presenting tonight. Tom, if you can hand them the remote, I will get the PowerPoint up. Yeah, I'll have to change the view. I think I got it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mendoza. Appreciate that. Chairman Andrade, Vice Chair DeBolt, and members of the Planning Commission, we're very excited to be before you this evening to present our proposed 50-unit townhome development in the city of Los Alamitos. We have our whole development team here, so at the end, of course, we'll be available for questions, but just to let you know that as well. A little bit about the Olson Company. We were founded in 1988, completing more than 170 communities statewide, totaling 8,000 homes. Recipient of numerous design awards over 29 years, providing creative solutions for underutilized sites. That's what we do. Experts in designing and building high-quality infill homes, achieving consensus through community outreach, which we did on this project as well. And we are ranked #1 in the nation for customer service by Alliant, and it's something we're very proud of as a company. We also have something called the HOA Champions Program, where we stay involved with the Homeowners Association for 10 years to ensure that the rules, regulations, and such are followed, and that the community is successful. Here we have a few photos of Olson communities. The upper left, we have, of course, Sausalito Walk, 17 single-family homes that border the site. We also have a few examples of other townhome developments we've done in the area of LA Orange County, one of which is San Gabriel Mission Walk of 80 townhomes. We have Covina Vintage Walk of 60 transit-oriented development townhomes, and Montecito Walk of 57 townhomes. Before I get too much further, I just wanted to thank staff and also to thank the Planning Commission and Council for their vision. One of the opportunities that this site created was the ability to build a residential community in an existing industrial zone, which we now have the ability to follow the R3 standards that were laid out through the General Plan 2015 update. Here we have a brief slide of the local context showing where the site's located. It's a great infill location, very walkable, and very close to the Los Al Boulevard corridor and City Hall as well, with walkability to both Oak Middle School and the high school, and very close to the Royal Oak Mobile Home Park and existing Sausalito Walk along Oak Street. Again, this is a prime infill location. Today, this is the site context you see today, which is the proposed location, as well as the adjacent former equipment rental use and office commercial, all of which are now rezoned based on the general plan amendment that was completed. So this is a great slide. It really it basically shows the vision of the city, which is to basically rezone the block to R3. And in our design, we achieved a very at the lower end of this density spectrum. So the R3 zone allows between 20 to 30 units per acre, and we are currently at 20.5. We also meet and exceed all zoning requirements of both the R3 and the condo code as well. One of the big things we wanted to do in creating this site is to create a good relationship to the neighborhood and to adjacent Sausalito Walk. We've contracted and worked with the same architect, landscape architect, and civil engineer team that completed the first Sausalito Walk, and we've selected a Spanish style of architecture in which we've incorporated landscape wall and lighting details to provide the visual connection and fluid transition along Sausalito Street and similarities between properties. As you can see, we spent a lot of time on the architecture as well. We've got four-sided architecture with varied roof lines and massing. The Spanish style is also consistent and complementary to Sausalito Walk. As you can see in the bottom, actually, let me see the next slide. So this next slide talks about the setbacks along the front, along Sausalito, and Chapter 17.08 in the code allows for a variation in the setback. There is a 20-foot minimum. However, if you do not get any closer than 15 and your average exceeds 20, then you're able to do that per the code. So you can see on the building on the left, we achieve a 28.9-foot average setback, and to the building on the right, we achieve a 21.4-inch average setback. What that does is it creates movement in the building that achieves a nice look from Sausalito and is consistent with the code. Here we have a nice picture of the transition between Sausalito Walk and the new development proposed. As you can see, we took the opportunity to create some nice separation there with generous 20-foot rear yards. The grade on the new Sausalito and Walnut property is a little bit lower than Sausalito Walk, so that's also a benefit. And we also stepped back the third floors and oriented balconies inward towards the inside of the project to create privacy. Here we have an illustrative site plan, just kind of gives you a nice overview of the community. You can see that we have 3 different building types that are highlighted in different colors. It has a net area of 2.44 acres, a total number of homes of 50, and a net density at the lower end of the R3 spectrum at 20.5. What's also nice is this has the context aerial, so you can kind of see the surroundings of the community. So why don't we go ahead and get started on the open space. So the code requires 10,000 square feet, which is 200 per home. And in total, as you'll see in the next few slides, we provide a total of 35,233 square feet of open space, which is 352% more. This depicts the common open space you see here in green. Then you layer in the first floor patios and backyards. Again, generous backyards and patios that interact with the common area, kind of creating a friendly relationship between the transition from common to private. And they also interact with those first floor living areas as well. That creates nice indoor-outdoor relationships. And next you layer in the balconies. Virtually all units have balconies or a combination of balconies, patios, and rear yards as well. So, for instance, the planned 6s and 7s that are along the south end, the bottom end of the slide that are adjacent to the single family, they have generous backyards and they have balconies on the top floor that face inward. The plans 1 and 2 have 10 by 10 balconies for those units as well. And then the plans 3 through 5 also have a combination of both balconies and patio spaces. But all of them have the 10-foot minimum dimension, but then in terms of area, they exceed that requirement. So what this creates is private open space diversity. You have a nice combination that meets our marketing needs, which is a variety of open space types in backyards, private decks, and patios. And what's a great statistic here is that 30% of these homes have exceptional backyards, which is really kind of a testament to the lower end of the R3 density that we were able to achieve here, which also calculates out to lower HOA costs for the buyer and a real great neighbor to the existing single-family neighborhood. The next slide depicts how the open space areas interact with the floor plans. So as you can see, the indoor-outdoor relationships both on the first and second floors and third floors even benefit from that direct amenity. So essentially the buyers are getting an amenity that they can directly associate with their living space. And that's really what buyers want these days. They like having that indoor-outdoor livability. So this outlines some of the open space amenities that you have here. Item number 1 is the Esplanade, which provides a great north-south connection from Sausalito to Cerritos for access to the high school and also access throughout the community, connecting with the interior walkways and patios that you see as item number 6. There's also a pocket park in the northwest corner, I believe, items 2 and 4, which have bike parking, seating, and specimen tree. And you also have all these nodes that you'll see in the next slide that are places with seat walls and trees where residents can interact. Also, you get a very great street scene along Sausalito with lots of landscaping and architectural detail, which is also very nice. And also number 8, textured paving at the entrance. What's also nice is really the amenity of walkability. And the walkability not only throughout the city of Los Alamitos area that this is in, but also within the site. So as you can see here, you have 3/10 of a mile of walking trails, including a quarter-mile loop through the community. And each one of the pedestrian nodes you can see now are highlighted with stars that show places where there are some undulation in the walkway, some seat walls, and some places for residents to gather and interact. And again, focal trees and seat walls at the common area at the northwest corner. This is the street scene you would see from Sausalito entering the community, and it basically activates the street scene, and it also carries the theme over from Sausalito Walk with the same landscaping and architectural design and really, this is sort of a continuation of the city's vision to make this from an industrial use to a more cohesive block of residential. So this is a continuation of the theme from Sausalito, which will hopefully be carried on further down Sausalito through the Monte Collins property. In this slide, it's really a good time to look at the architecture too. You can see the first, second, and third floor roof lines and the massing and the stepping back and the detailing of the homes, really creating that four-sided architecture that is commensurate with a high-end townhome. This is a great slide in that it focuses on the walkability of the community, where the front patios interact with the common areas and provide well-landscaped connections between the buildings to the esplanade and north and south from there. As you can see from the arrow in the upper right, that's focusing on the interior cross-section of the patio. So this is what you would see if you walked into the patio and turned to your left. You would see the elevation you see before you now. This is the per the red outline at the upper right, you can see that this is the view of the other side of the street, looking down the alley towards the end there. And what's interesting about this slide is you can see the garages. I think you can read a little bit from the shadowing that the garages are stepped back, and they also have the third floor balcony patios that are faced inward to create the sense of privacy for adjacent Sausalito Walk. But again, a lot of architectural movement to benefit from. This is an illustrative site plan with some thematic pictures of some of the amenities, the textured paving, the mail collection location, and the seat wall pedestrian gathering area or contemplation area. Here's a little bit larger slide of this, which basically shows you the whole property with all the yard spaces, both private and common. And this really showcases the movement of those garages. You can see how the driveways in front of the garages create that step back, and just the building's relationships to those rear yards, especially for the plans 6 and 7, which are really important. Finally, we did a slide to just compare the criteria that we set to meet and exceed. On the open space, we have 10,000 square feet required. We're proposing 35,233. In terms of the front setback, we have an average requirement of 20, but on average, even though we do step in a little bit within the 20, we are on average at 25.2. The density, we are allowed to go up to 30 per acre, but we are sticking to the very low end of that density at 20.5. The side yard setbacks, we could go as little as 5 feet, but given the sensitivity of the adjacent uses, we have a 16-foot setback from Sausalito Walk to the buildings, and then 10-foot 2 on the opposite side with the buildings' proximity to the Monte Collins site. In terms of storage space within the units, which is in the condominium code, we have a 200-foot requirement for which we believe we are providing 240 cubic feet of storage space. The rear yard, which is at the back of the property, really it's the rear setback. We're required to have 10, but we actually have 46 feet. And in terms of lot coverage, 50% city standard, we're below that lot coverage at 40.7%. With that, I'd like to thank you all once again, and we look forward to answering questions. Again, our whole team is here, and again, thank you to staff for working with us and processing our application.
Thank you. So at this time, we can, Stephen, open the public hearing. Is that correct for this? Public hearing is open. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to come up and speak on this topic? We've got someone coming up, and then you'll be next. Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners and staff of Los Alamitos. My name is Gene Lassers. I have a property at 10622 Walnut, which sits on the corner of Walnut and Sausalito. I've owned that property now for 28 years, and I have been involved in the development of maybe 25 other buildings in the Los Alamitos area from approximately 1975 on. I'm familiar with the Olson Company. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, they approached myself and my partner from Alamitos Building and Development as to whether they should even go into building. And they built their first 2 buildings through Jeff Eckert and our company. They put out a good product, and they're an honest company. But whether you put out a good product and are honest, or whether you put out a bad product and are dishonest, you want to get the most for your money. And this is where my consideration comes in. I'm very concerned about the density of this project. The project that they built next door had 11 units per acre. This project has 20 units per acre. I don't know if you ever venture over to Sausalito Street during the day, but for some reason you cannot find a parking place on the street anymore, except where areas it's limited by the amount of hours that they can park there. I believe that 100 more cars from the area will cause increased congestion on the street, which is already congested. The number 2, the elevations. I'm very concerned about the elevations as it approaches Sausalito, borders Sausalito. I'm concerned that we are building a canyon there. I am concerned that when you build a 3-story project, it looks into the windows of 2-story projects across the street. I'm also concerned that the entrance is in a very poor place. I realize that it's difficult to get in and out of there. In essence, the entrance should be on Spring Street, but because of the rise there, I'm not sure that is conceivable. But I believe the entrance to the project should be further west toward Oak Street so that all the traffic doesn't pile up at the corner of Walnut and Sausalito. And I'm not sure where all that traffic's going to go or how it's going to be directed. And the last thing is visitor parking. I'm not sure that there's enough visitor parking there. I lived in Bixby Village for a long period of time. They had visitor parking there, but you could never find a parking place. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can you please sign the sheet before you?
If someone
Can I have you sign the sheet, sir?
they'd like, sir, they'd like you to
You sign in on the sheet.
on top.
Oh, you signed it? Thank you. Also, I forgot to preface by saying if you could hold your comments to 5 minutes, please. Thank you.
Was that directed at me?
No, sir.
I have to start with a disclaimer. I'm an elected official in the city of Los Alamitos. However, I live right next door to this property, and I will have to recuse myself, hence my appearance today, so I can have my say today while you're still in the planning process. I'm not against the Olson Company building something there. I'm not one of those, oh, it should be a park. Something's going to go there. But, so I want to ask you for some protection as somebody whose house is literally 4 inches away from their building site. And that is, the last 2 weeks we've been woken up 7 in the morning to the banging and shaking of our house. So bad my wife had to leave the house for a while for what was going on at the backhoe place where they're taking out the foundation. And so I'd like some consideration for the current residents as to how the dirt's going to be handled. As it looks right now, this is going to be built in phases, which means this building could be going on for several years, and the dirt and everything else will mean we're not going to open our windows on the back of the house for as long as that development is going on. It strikes me the enormity of this project. As the previous speaker said, between this lot and the lot next door, you're looking at 160 units. If you figure 3 cars per unit, that's 480 cars, making 1 trip a day. That's roughly 1,000 trips. You ever been on Sausalito? Where's 1,000 trips going to come from? If they make 2 trips a day, you're almost 2,000 trips. There's no way that that street can handle that. There's a Rutan Tucker letter that was sent to all of you that claimed that there was an R4, and it also talked about you cannot hinder this project except for the consideration of safety. Well, let me talk to you about safety. There's mitigation going on regarding parking and traffic. I'd like to see how they're going to mitigate. There's no space over there. As the previous gentleman said, there's no parking now. And the project as it's outlined now does not consider enough parking for this project. On the safety aspect, the last Friday, Oak let out at noon. The gridlock in our neighborhood was so bad I could not get off my street. Cars were stopped all the way to every light, every stop sign. Thus, when a light turned green with the stop signs, only 4 or 5 cars could get out. An ambulance or a fire truck could have never gotten in there. And I think that has to be part of the safety consideration here. You do have the ability, under the safety of all of us residents, to mitigate this project. That being said, as I started out, we're not against Olson Building, but we do ask that you enforce the code, enforce the new waste laws, make sure that the parking is taken into account here, and that the code is followed, and what's built is good for the whole community. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rachel Trotter. I'm a resident of Los Alamitos. I actually had the opportunity to attend one of the community meetings that Olson put on to discuss this plan and answer questions with all the residents that came. And I'm 100% in support of their project, and I think it's a welcome addition to our community. Thank you.
You sign in, please.
Yes, I already did.
Oh,
Thank you.
excellent. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Natalie Chavez, and I am a resident along with my husband and our children here in Los Alamitos. I live on 4423 Farquhar Avenue, and we have our lovely naval base right in front of us. So I am truly honored and thankful to be living in Los Alamitos, and I fully support the project 100%. We love Oak Middle School. My children have gone there. I know it gets crazy busy because of the population around the city, but I 100% support this project and think it would be great and beneficial to our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Wilson. I'm with Cottonwood. I remember the first time I stood here was probably 15 years ago, is my guess, and it was about parking with the church, and I think that's about the time where restricted parking was added to one side of the street on several of the streets. We subsequently rented Oak and the high school for parking and bussed people in. Like was said a while ago, the city changed the general plan and kind of cast the die for what this property will be used for the zoning that it's currently in. That limits who we could even consider selling to. And Olson came and offered to purchase a property, and they had a project in mind. So we with them have worked through many obstacles to get to this point, and I believe that they've presented a good project. The density, from what they said, is about 20 instead of what it could be 30. The parking, I mean, the traffic is an issue, but we made it much worse than this will on Sundays. You all know that. So it's I believe it's a good project and support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my name is, pardon my voice, I'm having trouble tonight. My name is Mark Watman. I am one of the owners of the Sausalito Walk homes. And really my concern, I mean, I like the Olson Company. They do just what they said. They attend our HOA meetings, good company. And like Richard said, we know something is going to be built there, but my concern selfishly as an owner at Sausalito Walk is value. So we know that the homes in our area, at least the unit that I live in, just sold next to me for $800,000. And unfortunately, because of the zoning restrictions, our homes, our single-family detached homes are called townhomes. So if they've got 2,100 square foot units going in next door, I know they're not going to be going for $800,000 or more, and I feel like that's just going to kill our property values. Now, if they continued the same style that they put up at Sausalito Walk and just carried it across, those homes are going to go for much more than 800, and it will just keep our values at a good solid level. But those condos, I'm telling you, are going to kill us. And I don't know for sure what's going next door, but if they're apartments, that's going to make it worse. So I would just ask you to consider that, you know, as a homeowners yourselves probably, if a project went in next to you that's going to kill your values, you know, are you going to be happy about that? So that's my only concern. I mean, if somebody can alleviate that, that's great. But I know there's 2 other homeowners here in the complex, and I know their concerns are the same as far as value goes. So that's all. So.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tina. So I living in a neighborhood in South Resort Coast, and there is no way that our street can handle the traffic. This is the project. Right now, without the project, school time, I can't even get out of my house due to traffic. So this project does not have enough parking. Where are the extra car going to park? I hope that we'll get a project that fit our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else here to speak on this topic? Okay. At this point, do you want to go ahead and we can leave it open, or do we need to close the public hearing at this point?
You're probably going to leave it open because this is going to be a continued
Carryover.
public
Right.
hearing. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and leave it open and bring it back to the commission at this point. Any comments from anybody?
I think the common theme is, and very right, the gentleman from Cottonwood is absolutely correct. There is no such thing as parking in that area. That is a concern. I walk that whole neighborhood. I can tell you, rarely do I see anything that you could find a parking spot on Sausalito and Chestnut. So it's a very heavily impacted area. As to where those cars all come from, I really don't know. But it's very impacted. So I would hope that with Olson that they will take a look at parking situations as being a priority, because when you have guests that are coming to visit, or even you're selling on your homes, you got to have a place for people to park and park safely. So that would be something I'd really like to make sure that we look at. The other thing that I also was looking through this stuff, when we were working on the plans with them for the other units, the Sausalito project that is it is now, wasn't the name of that Cottage Way, something like that? It didn't blend with the area. We asked them to change it, and they changed it to Sausalito Walk, and it looks really nice. Are they going to be able to blend that same kind of transition down through this project? Would be nice to make sure that the front of this blends in almost like an extension of the Sausalito Walk 1 becomes Sausalito Walk 2. The entrance, I make sure where the entrance is that it's going to be adequate. It's going to be difficult. School always will be affected. I want to say more in the afternoon hours for probably about 30 minutes every school season, no matter what we do. I know that I don't plan anything around school hours because I can't get out of my driveway. So I just make it a point to not leave at that hour. But it would be nice to kind of look at how can we work with maybe the school district to find a way to have them curtail their traffic a different direction. I don't know that they always have to come in and park in that vicinity, and I know that they're doing a lot of that. Traffic parking, making sure that we blend in the two units looking together, maybe looking at the density would be some of the things that I would like to see us take a look at.
I'll talk about parking too, because I don't think the project meets the parking requirement with the driveway parking is tandem, which our code is very clear that tandem parking is not allowed. So there are 100 parking spaces in garages, 11 head-in and 3 parallel, which gives you 114. And I believe the requirement was 125, Steve?
Yeah, 125.
According to the plan. So that's number one. They clearly don't meet the parking requirements. And there's nowhere where you're going to get parking outside of this track. I drive, for the last month since I knew this was coming on the agenda, I take Spring home and go through that area and check it out. And you live there, you know, there's nothing around. And I was looking at, I live on a little street similar to Sausalito Walk, but in Los Alamitos, we're on a cul-de-sac, 17 homes. And I counted, we have 52 cars in 17 homes. So that's 3.05 cars per house. So if you have 50, you're going to have a minimum 150 cars coming in and out of there every day. I just don't see how this project can support that, especially when you look at Sausalito Walk, which also never has parking, and they have a few, I don't know what, they have 9 or 10 street parking, and there's rarely parking in there. This piece of property is 59% bigger than Sausalito Walk, and you're adding 159% more bedrooms. So it just seems the density just does not work for me.
Anybody? Yeah, I'm under the same at this, I mean, those are serious considerations for me as well. Parking, obviously, the amount of additional traffic, safety, all of, there were some really good points brought up by the community with regards to that. Would also, there was a concern brought up about the dirt and the project, the phases, how it was going to be handled. And it would be nice to get some information back on that. What is the scope of the project as far as length of time? What are they going to do to mitigate that? I believe there are certain requirements through AQMD anyway that have to be done with regards to dirt and concerns with that, but would like to know more about that. And the density just does seem, I understand in the PowerPoint meeting the code with respect to the stats that you've given us, but the density, the open space, there's a lot of driveway and what didn't appear to be a lot of actual open space to me. I mean, there's a walkway, but it's really, really tight in there. seems a little heavy. Again, I understand the zone, I understand that the general plan, I understand that it's meant to be built on. Just seems a little heavy for me, the way it sits right now.
Then see, the general plan, even though it's R3, you can still build single-family homes.
Yeah, you can go,
Yeah.
they can repeat what they did
Like,
last
I think it would be awesome if Sausalito Walk just went all the way across, including where they want to build a bunch of apartments. I mean,
Makes more sense to me.
I was just going to throw my comment out, but initially, I think, this is a big project, a lot of units. But I wanted to see it. I wanted to see it presented and see what it looked like and so forth. I agree that area seems to be more and more cars, more and more parking. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure, is it because of the multi-unit buildings that are going in over there? I'm not really sure why. I don't always think that this project has to suffer because there's not enough parking. I also feel that if they put this project in and these people park in their garages, then there wouldn't be any parking problems. And if everybody else parked in their garages, there wouldn't be any parking problems. So I am not as sympathetic on the parking issue as most people are. I'm just throwing out my opinion, because I don't think people always utilize their parking for their units. And I don't think that people can complain about parking when they don't park in their own garages on their own property. So if our codes are designed to accommodate parking issues, then people should use their properties to park their cars properly. So,
But at a bare minimum,
They
it has
don't
to
meet the
meet,
parking
it has to meet the minimum.
well, yeah, I'm not saying about that. I'm just saying in general.
Yeah.
In general
No, that makes sense.
comments.
can I ask the applicant a question? Well, I think it's Sausalito Walk, you're required to park in your garage, right? You can't use it for storage. Will that be the same here?
Absolutely. It'd be the same enforcement.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a quick question for staff. So when we calculated parking, we took all the optional bedrooms into account?
Yes, we did, actually.
And then what about, there's one plan here that has a lounge upstairs. Was that taken into account? That's
Yeah.
counted as a
It still
as a
is
bedroom.
taken into account, yeah.
Okay. So I agree with everyone else's comments. Gary's right. If the project meets our development standards, then we're kind of limited as to what we can do as far as how off-street parking is impacted in the surrounding neighborhoods, because we could take that into some consideration, but if the parking meets the requirements that we have outlined in the code, then we have a hard time denying it based upon parking. But I don't see that this project meets the parking requirements, so I think that's probably, I also have some questions about the open space and whether, I think, Art, maybe you mentioned it, whether decks. Like,
Yeah, that's on my list here.
Yeah, we would count a deck as that private open space. I think most of us would consider that to be an adjacent yard. And when I was looking at this, I was wondering, I'm like, well, how do some of these people access, the surrounding yard area? And I think you guys have outlined that as deck area, and I don't know that that's consistent with my thoughts on private open space.
Yeah, I'll keep you in mind. Or do you want?
I was going to add one more thing. I was curious. There's residents here from Sausalito Walk. I'd be curious to see how Sausalito Walk has affected the area. Are people that live in Sausalito Walk parking on Sausalito and parking on Walnut? I mean, are those people spilling over into the neighborhood? And I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that so far. But
Do you want to go ahead and come on up?
So I think Mary Ann brought up the point that for every unit, there's typically 3 cars, not 2. So what ended up happening is most everybody went down and got a permit to park on the street. So a lot of cars from our complex are parking on the street.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So they're not being held to the HOA after all?
No, they park 2 in the
Well, no,
garage.
we are. In fact,
Oh.
we're enforcing the no residence parking in the common area. That's for the most part, when you drive by Sausalito Walk, most of the spots are empty because it's guest parking. Now, from time to time, you'll have somebody have to park there for whatever reason, but the violators are being brought to a hearing in a couple of weeks. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So, but to that, I mean, when you have the more bedrooms you have, the more cars you're gonna need eventually. You're probably not buying those bedrooms so they can sit empty. You're gonna have kids, and those kids tend to grow up and they wanna drive a car, and they wanna, you know, and in a 5-bedroom house, you have the potential to have, you know, 5 or 6 cars. I mean,
Yeah, I think at some point we're gonna need to relook at the parking, because I think when it was talked about, you know, not everybody drove. I mean, now, every kid at the high school gets a car when they turn 16, except for my daughter. But all of her friends did. I heard about it for a year, you know, and grandparents are driving until they're 85, you know, so even if you have your mom move in with you, she's got another car.
My son could drive as a sophomore and could not get a permit at the school because there was not enough parking. Only juniors and seniors.
So
That's how many kids have cars.
Yeah.
All right. I just have a quick question. It's going to be for staff, just from what was just said regarding prohibiting the residents from parking in the along the street. I believe there's something in our code that says that all of the spaces are to be available for the owners and tenants of the required parking, correct? Something along that line.
It raised my curiosity too, hearing from a development where the developer was in front of this commission just, what, 4 or 5 years ago, and said that it wouldn't impact parking on the street, and now hearing that they require them to park on the street?
No.
It's very contrary to what was promised during those public hearings.
That's not my question. It's not the It's not them. They're not required. I'm talking about the streets outside the complex. I mean, they can get a permit. I mean, if they're in the area.
Yeah,
but I'm talking about prohibiting owners and tenants from utilizing the required parking. Those spaces make up part of the required parking. Okay, so which goes to the need.
I totally agree.
Which goes to the need for resident guest parking, designated guest parking.
Which evidence has shown that it doesn't work.
Well,
just by these testimony tonight.
Well, we have required parking, which would be for the owners and guests, owners and residents, you know, the owners and tenants, that type of a thing. And then what I'm talking about is different. I'm talking about guest parking, which would be in addition to the required parking. Now, we do not have that in our code for new construction, but we do have it in our code for condo conversion. Kind of strange, in my opinion. But I think there is also a section of our code that says that what we have here are minimums and not maximums, and that we have the right to impose. We can add to it if we can, I guess, if we can justify. This is a kind of a question for the staff, maybe something we need to look into. Can we require guest parking in addition to the required parking if we feel that that's needed under our code sections? If that's something for the staff and the future attorney to figure out, then that's, before that thought escaped me, I wanted to get that out there. Okay, now, so here's what I have written down, though, and it's been mentioned before. One is the tandem parking, and I'm just going to go through the numbers. There's 141 spaces supposedly provided. I asked for a copy of the screenshot that was on the city website, which is what we all got, and because I noticed, I had looked at that prior to getting this. I didn't go to the meetings, but I looked at the shot, and I looked at the parking, and it said 126 spaces required, whereas what we were given today says 122. And the 126 is still on the site. And so that obviously jogged something, and I wanted, because I had gone through all this math. I hadn't seen the floor plan, so I went through the math, and it came up right on 126. They were including all the optional bedrooms. I mean, I'm going, wow, man, this is just spot on, you know, yay. And then, of course, when I see the 122, I want to know where the 4 spaces went. So that's why I had that. And I'll go back on that in a little bit. So regarding the parking, I come up with the site as it's presented as being 19 spaces short out of the, for what is here, for what they're proposing. They're proposing 122. I'm coming up with a need altogether. I'll go through it. You've got the tandem parking inside the units, which is 7 spaces. You have the parking that is outside. They're parking in front of the garage doors on 10 of the units. That's 20 spaces. And parking in front of the garage door, in my opinion, is tandem parking. It's in a line. Our spaces all have to be, the spaces have to be accessible at all times. So therefore, the interior space is not accessible if you've got a car parked in the driveway. I mean, so whatever. So that's 27 spaces. Then you have 3 spaces that are going to be, I guess, parallel parking somewhere on the, I guess, the west side of the street. And we have a requirement for zero-angle parking, which is what that is. There's no angle to that, that the space has to be 9 by 19. And I believe the space is somewhere 8 by 18 or 8, something like that. So the space is not big enough for what has been proposed, so I think we need to adjust that. But also the street width. That's another reason I got the plan. There's no dimension on our plans here for street width that I could see on the site plan. But I looked on the city website, there was a number, and I'm assuming it's the same, and it's 24 feet, which is the required distance for a drive aisle that has two-way traffic. So even if you have the parallel parking there, you're encroaching into that drive aisle by 9 feet, if you have a 9-foot space. So, to my way of thinking, that's another 3 spaces that are lost, don't comport with the code. If you go to Sausalito Walk, I believe that street is 24 feet wide, but you're allowed to park on both sides, and you have that extra 8 feet, which I think you're 40 feet wide. So you comply on that, but not on this. Okay, same builder, same thing. Okay, and then we get into the units, okay, the bedroom count. And I'll start with the lounge, because I saw the lounge too. That is in your unit number 7, or plan 7, I guess it is. In your plan 7, you have two plan 7s on site. They not only have the lounge, but they also have another room in that same area that they call I think they call it a bar or card room and a lounge. And if you look at that, that's enough for 2 rooms. I mean, that is enough for another 2 bedrooms. I'll follow the code. It's a room that could be used as a bedroom. Not that it is a bedroom, but it could be used. So for that plan 7, that's 2 more spaces that you need. For plan 5, this is where I'm figuring out is the discrepancy on the parking on here. On the plan 5, the earlier version of plan 5, you called the room coming into the entrance on plan 5, you called it a parlor.
I think it's plan 6.
Was it plan 6?
It's the one that's now a dining room.
Wait a minute. Well, maybe I'm not reading it right.
Art, look
No, it's. I'm sorry. Wait a minute.
Art, is this the?
Is this it?
No, it's plan 5. Oh. No, I'm getting to that one.
Okay.
You're ahead of me.
Okay.
Okay, so for plan 5, that was, parlor was just simply eliminated. But when I look on the plan, it's called foyer now. So the name was changed, but the space is the same. And so there are 6 units, there are 7 units that are designated as Plan 5. I believe the foyer should be considered, so that's 7 spaces, or 7 rooms, okay? And then unit number 6, or Plan 6, you have 6 of those, and you have a room that is just adjacent to the entry that is, you have to walk through a hallway where you have a closet on one side, a bathroom on the other, and you walk into a room by itself. And that's called the dining room. That's fine, but again, in my opinion, it's a room that could be used for a bedroom, and that would be another 6 units, or another 6 rooms. If you add that up, you have 15 rooms at a half a space each. That is 7.5, and you round up, so that's 8 more parking spaces would be required because of the room count. Okay, so I think that needs to be corrected. Okay, and then the other issues that I have with this, is one, our code requires that we be provided fully dimensioned plans, or at least on the site plan, fully dimensioned. It's not fully dimensioned. Like with the roadway width, like with the full distance of the lot on down the sides and at the angle. I'd like to know what the perimeter of the buildings, that type of a thing. So I want to double check and see that the square footages are correct. That somehow we get to all these numbers. It's nice to be able to double check that. My other concern is the trash bins, trash carts, trash cans, whatever the carts, being located inside the unit or in the garage, and not in a space outside the unit. I don't know. I find that I might be wrong. I don't know if if that could be a potential health issue, or it just seems unseemly to me to have your garbage inside your well, it's not a living space, it's your garage. So I have a concern about that. I know our code calls out for enclosures, and gives them the option of having carts, but my concern is the placement of the carts. Okay, there should be some space outside these units where you can put them that are not going to be sitting and parked in front of their house or something like that. And then along the same line, with respect to that, I watched the city council meeting a while back where a representative from Republic, which is the service provider for the trash, was talking about organic waste. And like recycling, organic waste is coming down the pike. I mean, I think it's already in effect. Everybody's trying to scramble to figure out how to meet the requirements. And the requirement right now, the threshold is 4 cubic yards of trash. If you generate more than that per week on your site, then you're going to fall under this organic waste law, and I'm sure going to have to provide some type of containers and removal and this type of a thing. Okay. And so my question, and this is more of a question to staff, and maybe look for a little further research. Even though these are built as individual, they're going to be individually owned. This is still a 50-unit this is a multi-unit property of 50 units, and that definitely falls under the category of the organic waste purview. But the question becomes, how do you determine the organic, the volume of organic waste? Internet is great. If we have the 45-gallon containers, if you want to convert a dry gallon into cubic yards, it is 0.26 is the factor. So if you take 45 gallons times 0.26 and take that times 50 units, for each cart you've got 13 cubic yards, and you're over the threshold for just one of the carts. And if you're having, I only see 2 carts there, I'm assuming there's no green waste being generated on the site? No grass clippings or anything like that. You have 2, we have 3 here in town. We have a green waste, we have the recycling, and we have the trash. I see only provisions for 2. I'm making an assumption, which is probably wrong, bad thing to do. I'm assuming that the third one that's not there is a green waste one, because some of them have no yards, but the ones that do have yards, that's a common area. Maybe the guys doing the yard work are going to haul it off site, so maybe that's a non-issue. But for sure the other 2 are, with respect to organic. And I guess the question is, are you required to go by the site, or are you required to go by the individual unit with respect to complying with the organic waste thresholds and law? And I think that's a question that we need to get answered, probably from Cal Recycle. And I would recommend that either staff contacts Cal Recycle in Long Beach and gets clear answers on that, or invite them in to give a presentation or something so we know about it, because this is probably the first project that has come to us with this, and I think it's something we're going to be dealing with down the road, so it'd be nice to know about it. Then the last thing is I like the idea of the EV space set up for EV, electrical vehicles. I think for something of the size, even though I know it's not mandatory, it would be nice to have maybe at least three of the spaces maybe set up to have I think all you have to do is put in the infrastructure. You don't have to actually set up the unit, but at least provide it so it's there, so that if the association in the future decides to put a couple charging stations out there, they can do that. I think that's all I have. Oh, no, I do. I have one more. Very important. Private open space. Our code section requires that each unit have 10 square feet. Well, it doesn't say 10 square feet. It says no measurement less than 10 feet, okay, of private open space. The definition in our code for open space is land that is not covered by a driveway or concrete or a structure, and that is open to the sky. So if these are going to be private and you're utilizing these decks, I noticed at least for sure on all the units on the on the east side of the project, they're all covered by either the unit above them or they're covered. You're the 10 square feet, or the 10 by 10 is not 10 by 10 open. You've got maybe 5 feet open, and the rest is covered either by the unit above or by a patio roof or something like that. So I think that that's something that needs to be dealt with.
There's a good picture for you from their elevation.
So anyway,
Yeah, you can see the covered.
So those aren't open. They're not open to the sky. They're private space, but they're not private open space. That's all I have.
Did the fire department approve this yet?
They reviewed it, yeah, and they provided,
Gave us, comments to put, conditions.
they reviewed both the environmental document, and they also reviewed the project that
Right.
submitted to them. And so any conditions that they have on the project will be presented to you at a later date.
Any other comments?
I think I just wanted to revisit that open space again because there's two definitions in our code. One is for open space, one is for private open space. So open space is defined as an area of parcel that is not occupied by structures. So in that case, it couldn't be something like that because it's on top of a structure, right? So it's inherently occupied by a structure. Private open space is defined as an enclosed area located outside and adjacent to a dwelling unit, designated for private use by the residents. So again, I would kind of wonder whether
Adjacent.
Is this above?
It's not adjacent.
Right.
Adjacent, I think, and this is where our code leaves some room for interpretation, but I think it's intended to be next to it and open.
Right.
Open above, right? So that's how I read that. So I just wanted to kind of share that.
Okay.
And I agree with Art. Looking at the plans again, the floor plans, there is opportunity for some of the dining rooms and things like that to very easily be utilized as bedrooms. And I don't know that that was taken into account with our parking calculations. I know the extra room stuff and that third story, bonus room, was taken into consideration. But some of those dining rooms I don't think people are going to use them as dining rooms. I mean, they have a bathroom in between them and the living room, and they
And a
look more
foyer.
like they look more like a bedroom to me.
So I think at this point, we've addressed some of the concerns that we have. Public has addressed the concerns they have with the project. Do you have enough with those concerns for direction to work with the applicant?
I've taken very good notes from
moving
each of you.
Forward?
Assuming that you all agree on all of these issues and you would like all of these issues addressed, the applicant is in the room, his professional consultants are in the room. They certainly can go back to the drawing board and try to incorporate some of these things as we bring them back. The goal would be to bring it back in a month, but as with Mr. Wilson, I don't mean to disparage you, but as with Mr. Wilson, sometimes it takes them a while to get documents back to us. So I can't guarantee it would be a month, because we are going to have to analyze those new plans that they give us to provide you a staff report. Okay?
Correct.
So
So this
we
time-
will set it, if you are going to continue the public hearings, you would set it for that October 25th date.
Okay.
But I have concerns that their engineers or their architects can't flip the project quick enough back over to us. So there could be the potential where I ask for a continued public hearing at that date.
Okay, so at this time, I can make the recommendation to leave the public hearing open until the October 25th meeting, where we can then take a look at the updated.
And you will see
revision.
like a second on that.
Oh, so I can make a motion for a motion to move keep the public hearing open till October 25th.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Yeah, so, thank you, everybody. Can we go ahead and actually take maybe a 5-minute break
Mike, I didn't mean anything by that.
before we hit the next?
Architects sometimes take a while. And I wanted to give them a good example.
F for the moment, I believe, which is consideration of a general plan amendment and zoning ordinance amendment to change the designation of a vacant lot behind an existing home for the purpose of combining the two lots. 3621 Fenley Drive, Los Alamitos, 90720. Do you have a staff report on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do. This is one of our beloved homes in our city of Los Alamitos. It's the old home of Tom Rothwell. So many of us have been in the backyard of this home and know how wonderful it is. It's a huge property consisting of two lots. The front lot has a house on it, and the back lot is what you would call a, what's the word I'm looking for? Landlocked lot. It doesn't have a street frontage on it, but it's zoned separately than the front property. The front property is R1. The back one is OA and has been for years. It's never something we've cleaned up in the general plan. Maybe we should have. The Bloom family, who is a welcome addition to our community, has purchased the property and realized that they ended up purchasing 2 properties that didn't have equal zoning. They would like to do some things with the backyard. I'll let Mr. Carl Bloom explain what they'd like to do in the future. But in order to do some of the things he likes to do, he needs to remove that property line between the 2. So in order to remove that property line, he has to have consistent zoning. So then he has to go through this process of the general plan, changing the general plan, and then changing the zoning code, and then the lot line adjustment will be applied to with the city engineer. That's a ministerial project in our city, and so then he'll go through that process. But all of this does require a lot of paperwork and took a lot of time. Mr. Bloom was very patient in the time it took, and it has to go through these legal what do you call it, mechanisms, and then also we'll have to go to the city council afterwards. A zone change is only good once the city council finalizes it after you provide a recommendation to the city council. So what you have in your packet tonight is a resolution for you to recommend the general plan and the zoning code amendment to the city council after you take public testimony and hear from Mr. Carl Bloom. This has been done before on the same street in the cul-de-sac. I think it's been done twice. It was before my time. So this isn't the first time the commission has acted upon changing the zoning on these properties. With that, I turn it over to, I'll introduce Mr. Carl Bloom to you, and then I would recommend that the commission hear from Mr. Bloom and then open the public hearing to take testimony from any neighbors that may be here or may be interested in the project.
Good evening. We bought the property 2 years ago, and really we were kind of misinformed by the realtors. We thought they were both R1 lots. They were both advertised it as that way. And we knew the next door lot to us had a similar situation, and they merged the 2 lots. And really just buying it, I really don't have any intent to build on it. I just kind of, as an engineer, I like things clean, and I don't want 2 property bills and everything. So I've just, this time, since we bought it and we're still fresh to it, I wanted to just make it 1 lot and be done with it. So, Mr. Mendoza and Mr. Oliver have been very helpful, guiding me through the process of getting the maps and everything I need to get it done. So that's really it. He's asked me what we plan to do with it someday. I mean, maybe a swimming pool or something, but really at this point, we bought this house and we cleaned up the back lot, and I have 3 little kids, and now it's playable and fun. So that's really the extent of it. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Any questions? Or?
Do you have any questions from the applicant?
I have one. Do you know, does this trigger, is this a Prop 13 event? Does it trigger any reassessment for you?
I was told it doesn't. When I've dealt with the assessor's office and stuff, the tax bill that I had, they just said literally it's going to be whatever your 2 tax bills are. They combine it, and it shouldn't change anything at all with my tax.
Okay, I'm just sure you.
I could shed some light on that. If you remember a couple of years ago, we brought some of those LA County properties into Orange County along the same street.
Right.
And we all held our fingers crossed that it wouldn't trigger anything. None of those did have a follow-up issue or problem.
Fine.
Never trust the tax assessor.
Yeah, you always quote who you talk to.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? Do we need to open up, first open up the public hearing with respect to this, if anybody would like to speak on this topic? Okay, seeing nobody, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Bring it back to the commission. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Just one quick comment.
Oh.
Well, go ahead. Let's vote on it, but I have a follow-on comment.
Okay.
All right.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I never heard what the motion was. I heard someone say,
Accept the staff recommendation.
okay.
To join the parcels.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Great. Motion carries. Well,
My follow-on comment is, there are other lots up there that have the same they're in the same position, and this should be, in my opinion, if the city should initiate, the rest of them and get them all zoned R1. Because what it does, with the OA, it prevents any development in that area. So if you want to do a pool, if you want to do an addition, or anything like that, they can't do it. And that created a very serious problem years ago. And that's a story that is an interesting one, but I won't share it. But anybody who wants to see it, talk about it afterwards. It's a great story. But I think I'd like to see that. I don't know if we can make that recommendation. Are we allowed to maybe suggest to the council that they consider initiating some type of get that whole area cleaned up?
Well, the only thing I would add to that is, we'd have to do outreach first before changing zoning on some of the
Right.
property, right? So,
Right.
But if the residents wanted to do it, I would be in favor of cleaning it
Yeah.
up, but we need to have some discussion with them.
Right.
Well, whatever.
Is that something that we would be able to even initiate before the property owner did?
I'm still counting 1, 2, now I have 3.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you would, under commissioner comments,
Right.
you would introduce an item asking staff to do a survey, and then come back to you with the survey results. If the survey results worked out favorable that you would want that, then you would do a resolution of intention to change the general plan and the code for those. And that's the process. It won't be quick, but it's not hard to do.
It seems like it would be worth knowing how many are
Yeah.
even left to do.
Yeah, I think there's probably 4 or 5, maybe
Okay.
a little bit more, yeah.
Are you saying we would do a resolution of intention prior to doing the outreach?
No.
Okay.
I would bring the outreach to you and survey them, and then bring that to you, and that would be your basis for adopting the resolution of intention.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Sorry you had to wait so long for that.
If we clean it all up, won't be very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, imagine.
I think we should.
Heaven forbid, just leave it, right?
Yeah, I think we should leave it.
Yeah.
It's more interesting that way.
Right. We need we need longer meetings. Yeah. All right, I guess we'll go, I think we're gonna bounce around still just a little bit, but actually we'll move to G on this one, 8G. The conditional use permit. This is an outdoor storage in the planned light industrial PM zone or Alliance Space Systems. Do you have a staff report on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Alliance Space Systems has applied to place some outside storage outside of their property. As with any industrial property, you want to make sure it doesn't add to problems within the area. So we researched that. There are a couple of industrial parks in the city where staff would absolutely not be supportive of this because of overflow parking issues, street parking, crowding on streets, things like that. We don't have those same issues in this industrial park. It's about as overparked as they get. We appreciate that they maintain their properties. We appreciate the open space on this industrial park. And so staff has looked at this favorably. It would be on the, Tom, help me out, that's the south side of the industrial park, right near the actual area where Cottonwood is putting their storage area. If you know, this is the old railway, right, Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the railway backs up to this property. So it would be on this side of the building. If you see the screen, the bottom half is the area right near the railway. So the structures would be right there. Staff is supportive of the project. This is a public hearing. I would recommend that you hear from the applicant from Alliance Space System. He's the architect working for Alliance. Also present is the manager of the property, Bill Budge, and I have a long-standing relationship. He's been here longer than I have, and it's nice to have one manager of a master-planned industrial park that takes responsibility for their property and make sure they're not adding to problems in the city. And Bill has managed that property very favorably over the years, and we appreciate it. So staff is supportive of the project. I would recommend hearing from the applicant, taking any public testimony, and opening the public hearing.
Okay, terrific. With that, can we maybe hear from the applicant?
Good evening. I'm Walter White. I'm the applicant representing Alliance. Looks like a pretty simple project for us. Anyway, I'm actually the builder. And there's really not, these booths are here already. I don't know what else they want to add this environmental test chamber. And maybe these guys can talk more about it if you have other questions.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have any anything for the applicant at this point? Okay.
For the applicant?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
For the applicant. What is a thermal test?
Environmental test chamber?
Environmental test, yeah.
So they create a cool environment and then they heat it up. It's they make satellites, so they're replicating space in a space, like an outer space environment inside that. You know, say more about it? Did I do enough? Did I do enough justice there? I don't know.
And then you're going to have a pad. Oh, create an asphalt. I'm reading off the
sure.
The application for that was submitted. Create a level asphalt parking space for a container van. What is that?
Answer that. I mean, probably better if he tells you because he's the one using all these devices.
Evening, Ken Easton. I'm actually manager of Alliance Space Systems. So the pad itself, we're opting to go with asphalt because it's easy to remove. A container will sit on top of that pad, and inside of that will be a chamber, nothing complicated, that we put cold temperatures into it, and we literally, with autocollimators, measure the twist of composite, graphite epoxy, graphite supercapacitor tubes, so that are used for antennas, high precision antennas that go into space. Okay. Basically, we're making sure that they don't twist excessively, that throws focal points out once an antenna is in space. No adjustment 3,000 miles out. So thermal cycle chamber, pretty simple. You take space flight hardware, you want to take it to cold temperatures that simulate close to space, and then bring it back up to hot temperatures, same thing when it comes around into the sun's focus. And that proves out that the hardware is going to be good. So nothing real complicated.
All right. And so you're using so you'll be using that. That's what you'll be doing with it?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the thermal testing chambers, you're going to be...
We'll be using that as well.
All right.
Yeah. We've had 2 down years because of the industry, as a lot of people know. Right now, we're carrying about a $27.5 million forecast for the next 12 months.
Wow.
So we've already doubled our touch labor for our facility, and we're still hiring.
Wow.
So this will add to our capabilities and bring in even more business from companies like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Northrop. Okay?
Very nice. Excellent. Anything else?
No, not for the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thanks.
So we need to open a public hearing on this as well?
And take testimony from any members of the public that might want to speak.
Right, so is there anybody here that would like to speak on this topic? Okay, seeing none, we can close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Anybody have any comments?
Nope. I have a question for staff. On page 5 of the staff report, it's in the middle paragraph, it says, inside the building but not within the purview of this CUP. And then it says install a new spray booth in the manufacturing area, demolish, replace, whatever tenant improvements he's doing in there in an installation. If it's not in the purview, why is it here?
To understand the total scope of the job.
Okay.
Yep.
One project.
Yeah.
And,
It's a building permit that'll come in all together. We want to make sure that we separated it out and make sure we knew what was subject to a CUP and what wasn't.
my last comment, this is being filed under a storage. Why, if they're using it, I was wondering what they're going to be storing in it, but if they're using it as part of their business, we have a requirement that that all business activities, including manufacturing, the sale and storage of merchandise or materials not conducted, let me see, it's prohibited. It's a prohibited condition, and that is manufacturing, sale, and all that out of doors. This should all be conducted inside?
No, not necessarily. I think the code's written for, I think the intent is, and we've always treated it that way, if somebody wants to do something outside, it would go to the commission for review. Even the one you approved earlier tonight, they will be using those. It is storage, but they will be using those. They will be using these as well.
Yeah.
They're outside the main part of the building. They're not inside the building. So we had to find a way to get them the approvals and the public hearing to make sure that they had the approvals to carry through. And our thought is, this pretty much meets the code.
Well, the code I'm citing is if my colleagues want to look at it, 17-14070, which says business activities. These are a prohibited condition applicable to occupied non-residential structures or properties, and it's number 4. Business activities including manufacturing and the sale and storage of merchandise or materials not conducted entirely within a totally enclosed structure, except as allowed by 1738.120, which is outdoor storage. So, I don't know. Is this an engaging in a business activity, including manufacturing, I guess? That's the question I'm raising. I mean, I'll throw it to everybody else. That's.
When did Alliance come to LaSalle?
Bill, how long has Alliance been here? I'm sorry?
We're here for 10 years plus 10 years will be early next year, and they've renewed their lease for another 4 years.
Thank you.
So it'll be 14 years.
I remember a guy that worked for them. He's retired from Alliance. And it was interesting that the work that they did, and he talked about it. Very stable and very good company. I don't have any issue with this. I see no problem.
I don't either.
I'll make a motion to approve CUP 17-04.
I will second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Opposed, Art?
Opposed.
Okay. Got that? Motion carries. Very good. Congratulations, thanks. Thanks for your patience, too. Okay, we're going to jump back to, I believe, item C was...
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks. go. Item C, 8C is a zoning ordinance amendment, 17-01, repealing and replacing regulations for accessory dwelling units in the residential zones in the city to comply with new state legislation. We have a staff report on that.
Certainly, as we warmed you up to this idea quite a few months ago. We provided you, if you remember, the state's guidelines on ADUs. Cities are starting to see people apply for them now. Cities are adjusting their codes. Every week, there's some city in Orange County doing a public hearing on ADUs. My colleagues are telling me there's 40 applications in Garden Grove already, in West Garden, just in West Garden Grove. So the word's out there. The realtors are pushing it in Garden Grove. I haven't heard it here in Los Alamitos. But they're encouraging the people to buy these properties so they can build a second dwelling unit behind their property, or what we're now calling accessory dwelling units. The state of California has passed a law that prohibits us from holding public hearings for such dwelling units. They've passed a law that prohibits us from requiring parking for such units. So the city attorney's office has written an ordinance that flies below the radar and doesn't violate any of the state laws to hopefully steer these in a better direction. It's not the best direction, but it's just a better direction than what the state is offering. And with that, this is a public hearing because it is a zoning code amendment. I would recommend that you take any testimony that the audience may have and then discuss among yourselves some of the changes in the code you'll see. You'll no longer have a reference to other words that were used to be used. You used to call them granny flats, guest houses, second dwelling units. We're removing all of that. So any residential structure built behind a person's house or in addition to their house would now be called an ADU, accessory dwelling unit. They're going to be permitted in all residential zones where only single-family dwelling units exist. No side or rear setback is required for a garage conversion. If somebody converts their garage, you don't have to have an extra setback. And then if they do it above a detached garage, you could only require a 5-foot setback. In most places, the code will continue to require that the ADU meets the applicable development standards, including other setbacks and height limitations in your city. It increases the maximum size to 1,200 square feet. The floor area of an ADU shall not exceed 50% of the existing living area. So the smaller the front house, the smaller the ADU. Minimum square footage is 200 square feet per unit. ADUs may not count against maximum density of sites. A garage, this is the one that my profession is having a problem with. A garage can now be converted to an ADU, and no setbacks can be required for an existing garage that is converted to an ADU. Additionally, if one of you converted your 2-car garage to an ADU, we cannot require you to build replacement parking. That is the one the professionals are having the hardest time with Sacramento on. There's been no talk or no hope of cleanup legislation on this either. So we're not very optimistic that the state will back off. We are requiring in our draft ordinance that the applicant shall be the owner of at least one of the units. That the owner of the property will be in at least one of these units. And it must be a ministerial approval. That means discretionary approval, taking it to a commission or taking it to a city council is not allowed. It has to be approved, reviewed, or denied based on our codes, state law, and at our level, ministerial. A great way to remember that word is administrative. ADU parking requirements. The legislation restricts the city's ability to require that parking be located in a garage. The space may be located in any configuration on the same property as the ADU, including but not limited to covered spaces, uncovered spaces, tandem spaces, or by the use of mechanical automated parking lifts. In situation where a garage or carport or covered parking structure is proposed to be demolished or converted in conjunction with the construction of a new ADU, replacement parking may be located in any configuration on the same property in the same manner. So ADU, the new legislation states that the local jurisdiction cannot require additional parking if it's within a half mile of a bus route or a train route. And you know almost everything's a half mile within a bus route. If it's located within an architecturally historic significant district. If part of the existing primary residence and or existing access structure, including a basement or garage conversions, if it's located within one walk of a car share vehicle, or it's located within an area where cities require on-street parking permits but does not offer permits to ADU occupant. So, you know, it's one of those gifts from the state. I think we've talked about it with you before. We're finally getting to this to you because we've been watching what a lot of cities are trying to push on the envelope and what kind of pushback they're getting from the state. So we held back for a bit, and now it's before you. It won't stop with you. If you guys recommend approval to the city council, this goes to the city council in the form of a code amendment. So it would have 2 readings, and then it would be good 30 days after that, and that would help us meet the January 1 deadline. With that, I'll turn it back over to the chairman.
Excellent. So at this time, we can open up the public hearing to see if anybody would like to speak on this topic. And since there is nobody in the audience, I think we can go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Any questions for staff or comments? Nobody?
Move approval.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries. On to the next. We are at D, right?
Yes, I think we're all wishing we had cookies right now.
Right.
No, brownies.
Where are they?
Brownies, sorry. I knew we wouldn't avoid those jokes, so I had to enter into it. Okay, the next one I'm going to work, Carrie's office wrote this, so I'll work in tandem with Carrie on demonstrating what we're doing here. It may seem like deja vu to you regarding marijuana. We only did this a little while ago for what we called medical marijuana. Since that time, the state has voted, I think we voted in, or the legislature, we voted in recreational marijuana. So now our code needs to start over and address that issue. It wasn't good enough to just use the word marijuana. Now we got to be more specific. Some cities are taking this in a totally different direction, creating avenues and resources for businesses to open like this in their community. Our recommendation to our planning commission and then to city council is to restrict this and prohibit the recreational marijuana sales in a storefront, in an industrial building. We are also recommending restriction of these for the cultivation in a storefront or an industrial building. And then we're also restricting delivery businesses in our city. And then again, this is for recreational marijuana. But we've also provided a lot of cleanup in the code too. You'll notice there's a lot of cleanup in the code. Moving to the word cannabis, is that right?
Yeah.
So you'll see the word cannabis used a lot because of some ever-changing legislation with it. And with that, I'll turn it over to Carrie to give you a little more information about this ordinance.
Basically, this would combine, as state law is now doing, combine medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. The state initiative that was adopted by the people last November doesn't really fully go into effect until January 1st. And although right now you can't prosecute anybody for possession. In fact, people who were prosecuted and convicted of possession are able to get their convictions set aside and thrown out. I saw that in March when I was in court in Torrance.
Wow.
But we need to have something in place by January 1st in order to avoid having the state allow things that, the city may not want to allow. We can, and this ordinance would, limit outdoor cultivation, but you can't prohibit cultivation of 6 or fewer plants so long as it's in an enclosed building. So this specifically allows 6 or fewer plants, but prohibits any more than that, and has standards for, safety, in order to keep children from walking into the backyard and grabbing the plants or taking them, using them. Even indoors, there are some standards in here to make sure, for one thing, that a family doesn't get to each have 6 plants. You have 12 people in your family. 6 times 12 is, I can't even do the math.
A lot.
6 plants per unit. I believe there's some standards for landlord permission. If it's a rental, you can't do it if your landlord doesn't want to do it. And pretty thorough staff report, mainly written by Lisa, reviewed by me, by Stephen, and by Tom. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Just a quick question with respect to the last item that we just approved to go to council with the kind of fixing that up, but that we had, I think we had some stuff in our code and the state now said that this was allowed. So we put this in our code. The state decides to actually override that. The potential exists that it could be overridden or not.
Well,
I think on a national level, you have the potential.
right,
Not just
that's
state
the
level.
danger, is the federal authorities.
So you put the code in, but at the end of the day, it's there potentially to be overturned by state or federal.
Yeah, this pretty much limits marijuana growth, usage, sales, et cetera, to the maximum extent that a city is entitled to limit it under California law. Federal law is a different matter, and there are a lot of complicating factors about federal law. Right now, the feds are not going after any states that are allowing either medical or even recreational. The U.S. Attorney's Office has kind of a hands-off policy, but that could all change.
But federally, it's still illegal.
Pardon?
But federally, it's still illegal. They're just not going after it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
What's this, has the city council talked about the marijuana issue? Have they given direction?
Yeah, actually, this topic started with the city council, and they did provide much direction to Carrie and Lisa in which to draft.
Okay.
And we took that direction, and that's what you have here.
Okay.
Now, 6 plants, are they aware how big a plant is? We're
Well,
not talking, a marijuana
Right.
plant is over 6 foot tall and can be a good 3 to 4 feet or more in diameter.
I think there's a height limit.
Yeah, just so
in
they
here.
know. Yeah. People seem to think they're just little bushes, they're not.
Right.
And they grow very fast.
12
They go
inches
very
of the
fast.
ceiling, is that what you're
Few
talking about?
months you have to cut them.
Can't come
Yeah,
within
you
12
don't
inches
know.
of the
You
ceiling.
know, I went, so.
Is that in the code?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, when I go back to the-
That's per the state, right?
Yeah. No, that's ours.
That's what we're suggesting.
Yeah.
Oh. Isn't that equal to the state? I thought we were doing.
Probably. I'm sure Lisa didn't stray far from
I thought we were
what the
doing
state-
Oh,
action
that is
on
the
the state.
You're right.
Prohibit.
That's the state, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're matching that. So I'm assuming we're matching what the state says.
Yeah, you don't want to get creative on this one.
Right.
We get survey calls every day from people testing us.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought counties and cities were allowed to have laws that were more restrictive than state legislation, but not less.
This is. That's what this.
For now, this is, yeah.
This is the maximum restrictions under state law. This is pretty much the maximum you can restrict marijuana.
From a zoning perspective.
So there, we have limitations as to, because we can't just say, hey, you can't do it in the city limits.
You can't
Personal.
ingest? These are zoning laws. These aren't behavioral laws of somebody walking on the sidewalk smoking.
Well, that's a state law.
Yeah, we're not touching on that topic.
That's a state law that says you can't do
Yeah,
that.
we're not talking about use.
Anyway,
Right.
this is the sale and distribution,
Yeah.
essentially,
Keeping it from becoming a business.
a business.
So, okay. I guess I always struggle with this because I resent, I guess, a little bit the fact that the states have put local jurisdictions in this position instead of doing what I think they should do. If they want to legalize marijuana, then the state should be lobbying the federal government and trying to change the law instead of
They probably are.
instead of legalizing something on one level that is illegal at a federal level, because that creates all kinds of challenges for everybody.
On page 3 of the staff report, under state law, it does indicate that pursuant to the AUMA, it's not permitted for any person to smoke or ingest marijuana or marijuana products in any public place where smoking tobacco is prohibited, within 1,000 feet of a school, daycare center, or youth center while children are present, or while driving or riding in a vehicle, boat, vessel, aircraft, or other vehicle used for transportation. So, you know, it's not, you can just start openly walking around smoking. You certainly can within your own house that you own. And probably in your backyard, as long as you're not within 1,000 feet of a school. So, but, you know, I feel your pain. I mean, this is, once again, although it's the people, it is the state telling cities what they can and can't do. And it started with a vote of the people in the entire state. California's not alone. You know, it's a trend.
It goes back to the adage, it's only illegal if you're caught.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Got a question. On page 5 of 10 in the cannabis prohibition and regulations, since I rent a lot of property, item B, or at the top of the page, B, it says a property owner. I'm sure that by extension is a property manager, probably as well, right?
Probably.
Okay, it says shall not rent, lease, or otherwise permit any person or business. And then in the next sentence, a property owner shall not allow any person to establish. Should we have like knowingly? I mean, you know, if you rent a place and they're doing it, I have no control. We don't inspect, we don't, you know, we can't inspect. So,
Would that fall under like the law on the map that if the owner of a property is notified that this is going on, that they're making meth, they give them, I can't remember if it's 24 or 48 hours to a victim, or the owner could actually lose the house? There is a law into that. Would that fall under any of this or no?
Well, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But in relation to Commissioner DeBolt's question, I think that your answer kind of answers what he's saying. In other words, well, okay, maybe you don't know it, and then you're informed of it, and you don't take action, then you come under this.
well, so we should have in there knowingly, so we know that you know that.
Well,
'Cause if
they're
you
always
don't-
gonna, the
if you
property
don't
owner
know-
is always gonna say, I didn't know.
No, they legally will notify you. The police department will, and they'll make sure it's in writing.
Well, I
Yeah.
guess that's my,
I think
But
there's
you
an
don't need to have
implication that if somebody is operating a marijuana business out of your property and you can establish that you didn't know it,
right,
you're not going to be held responsible for it.
all right. Well, I guess that's,
Sounds like a line needs to be added to the lease agreement.
oh, it's already, no, they're in the lease, it's all in the lease agreements already. The language is all in there, but,
That will help you
well, that helps, but I
keep your
just
jail sentence to a minimum.
keep it to a minimum. Yeah.
Another joy of being a landlord.
It's a minefield out there, let me tell you.
Any other comments or questions?
You have the first and second.
Okay, so we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Motion carries. And I think we bounced around the agenda, but I think we're finally at item 9, which is items from the Development Services Director.
We've kind of been working on all this. What else is going on? The boulevard is nearly complete. There's a few more steps we have to do on Los Al Boulevard. The lights come in mid-October. So there's 10 Old Town decorative
Nice.
double-armed street lights that'll be installed with banner arms on them. So the next week, the Recreation Commission will start looking at a policy for banners.
Okay.
So that's exciting. The next steps are the ramps. There's a new crosswalk mid-block at Southland Credit Union and the Ale House. So that needs to have some curb cuts done. So we're going to be doing that shortly. We need to get the correct size plants for a number of plants that were dropped off that weren't the correct size. We will then get to the point where we re-slurry the entire boulevard and restripe it. It'll go back to the 2 lanes plus right-hand turn lanes. There is speculation that it's 3 lanes. It is not 3 lanes.
It's
It's
so much
just
better.
from the striping.
So much better 3 lanes. It is so much better. Something that drives it every single day is so much better. The traffic flow is so much better. It's just a lot better. The way it
And
is right
then-
now is perfect.
And then replace the loops. So the loops are a little off right now because we're not going to replace them until we redo the blacktop. So once that happens, and then we're working on some kind of celebration.
Excellent.
So a lot of positive feedback. Really not the.
The brew house.
There was more complaints when we did Cantella than when we did Los Al Boulevard. So we're really happy with that. We've also had a chance to meet people and talk to them about it. And we're very pleased with it. So far, we're very under budget. I hope Southern California Edison bills that come in keep us near on budget. They're up to the electricity issue with Southern California Edison. We were $1,000 off the original bid. So it's pretty good. But we've had an inspector out there every day. So when they didn't use as much concrete as they thought they would use, we got a credit. When they didn't remove as much blacktop as they thought, we got a credit. Because we were there actively watching and measuring everything they did. So it really protects us. You pay hourly for it, but it really does protect us. So that's why you saw a guy in a little Toyota there every day. So during the first week of school, we moved the cones in the morning so everyone could get to school. So we've adjusted around it. And I think we'll be pleasantly pleased when that's done. What else is going on? I think. Down at the business.
Arrowhead.
Arrowhead. Yeah, I'm not sure. I know Southern California Edison has a permit to redo a lot of structures and their subcontractor, but that didn't. When I passed by that today, that didn't match the permit. So I'm not quite sure.
That lane, that's been a pain.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it tomorrow.
Shorten that up a little bit.
Something. They just need to finish.
When they get past the work, you know.
Yeah, I think that's the teeter
That's a
permit,
bottleneck
isn't it?
Right there, pretty bad.
Yeah, I think it's the teeter permit, but I was surprised that they were on private property.
Well, they're on
It's on
private
No, they're-
property, but they're in the lane.
They're in the street.
Oh, I know.
They
They
got
got
it
the lane
blocked off.
blocked
Yeah.
for digging on private property.
No, they've dug in the,
think they're
and
digging in
they're in the
the
right of way.
They
Look-
continued?
It looks like it.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Because I saw their backhoe on Arrowhead's
Well,
property.
it probably was. They were to keep it out of the streets, I think it probably, I'm guessing.
I'll take a look at it tomorrow with Dave.
Yeah.
Michelle and I and Dave will look at it.
Okay.
I think if we keep it 3 lanes, it would keep traffic off of Oak and Sausalito.
If we kept it 3 lanes, we would have
Cafe.
used other money to do
There you
it.
go, there you go.
That was a long battle that we're past. Mr. Lowe,
I wasn't part of it. I don't know anything about it. But
Okay.
all I know is it's really nice 3 lanes right
call
now.
me one day, we'll talk about it.
Commissioner reports.
I would just like to ask, I would like to look at the parking at a future meeting, our parking requirements, and adding requirement for guest parking at condo complexes.
Would you like a resolution of intention, and can you get 3 others to agree with you?
I will.
And we
I'd like
probably
to.
ought to agendize that.
We would.
I mean,
Wait,
if you're
agendize the
asking for
choice?
a motion now with 3 commissioners,
Well, I
Four
was trying to
commissioners.
streamline it a little.
Heaven forbid you do that.
Sorry, guys.
So, what,
So you would like to agendize the parking issue?
Yeah.
Got it.
Could we
And
also-
3 others?
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Forget
We
it.
also look at
ask
that
for 3
properties,
others.
Okay,
You know,
what?
the
If-
properties over there, by where the Rothwell property, the gentleman that was here today.
Yeah.
Is there anything
we
about?
already
We did that.
Yeah, well, no, he said to put it in this.
Talk about it now.
Yeah,
Okay.
So then I'll bring that to you too.
yes.
So, Michelle, Finley Properties, the second lot's behind them. And then parking, general staff report, no resolution.
And will we ever get them to fix the mediums now on Catella? La Salle looks so nice.
We're over in the Highlands right now. We're
I was
digging.
gonna say, are you purposely killing the grass in my neighborhood?
Yes.
Because they look terrible.
We did, and then we're moving back over to that center median. So the Highlands, we let go during the drought, now we're back in the Highlands repairing those on both streets that go into the Highlands. So the guys worked last Friday and they'll work this Saturday, and then one more day, so we're taking out some trees that are leaning too, because they're just not gonna grow right.
Placing them?
Yes, and all the landscaping will be
Little
replaced.
curly brown trees?
Hey, we're getting better. Gary's got a taste level that's pretty good. If you've seen the entry right here, he's kicking it up a notch. So, and then we will go over to the center medians. But we're trying to manage the time and shift them in that direction.
And
Yeah.
then from somebody that lives right in the area that should have been impacted by the La Salle project with all the closures and everything, because I just live right there.
Yeah, you're right near
I
the
have
street
to
closure.
tell you, I had no problems at all.
Okay.
It was done really nice. I could get in and out easily. So that was really nice.
Okay.
So that I can,
Those thanks to Tom.
Okay.
Go ahead.
But yeah.
Thank you, and,
I'm not leaving, but I need to get some boxes to Michael.
oh,
My
okay,
car's in the back, I'm gonna go around the front.
all right.
Okay, thanks, Gary.
Pleasure serving for you,
Thank you.
serving with you.
Thank you.
thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Best of luck.
Say hi to Lisa.
Thank you.
Tonight.
I will.
Appreciate it.
I just wanted to commend staff on all of the information that was in our binders. Although it was a lot of information for us to go through, I can't imagine what that took to put together, and it was very impressive. So I know that took a ton of work on your guys' part.
Good thing Tom's here.
Yeah, so anyway, I just want to say I could recognize how much that took, and I appreciate what you guys did to give us the,
Right.
that was insane.
Yeah.
But it gives us, it really does give us a really good guide to work with, so thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, real quick. On further reflection, I'd like to change my vote to a yes vote on item 8G.
Can he do that?
Yeah, you can, can't you, prior to the meeting ending? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's prior to the meeting, isn't it?
You,
Not prior to the public hearing.
you opened the public hearing, you closed the public hearing, then you took the vote.
So the vote was after the public hearing was closed. Do we
The
need
first test.
I'll look it up.
Well, do we need to
I'll
wait?
look it up.
But it won't make a difference.
No, I'll look it up.
If there's the opportunity to do that, we can change the minutes to reflect.
That he changed it?
Yeah, look it up, if you can. Otherwise, it's good.
Okay? Okay.
I don't know if we're gonna remember that one, so we'll rely upon Michael.
Okay, all right, excellent. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you all.